Sword of Coming Chapter 1224. Chapter 1224. A sword can defeat one person, a man of enlightenment and a swordsman. It seems that he can kill heaven and earth with just one word. Xiao Pu was silent, and she was instantly sure that the previous desperate fight in Ma Mansion was definitely not Yu Pu versus Yu Pu, plus additional martial arts versus magical powers as they had estimated. It's immortal versus immortal. Regarding the cost of borrowing realms and Taoism from Master Bai Yijinglu, Xiao Pu and senior brother Lu had their own estimates. Even if Qin Pingan was a martial artist at the end of the realm, she still felt that he would definitely fall to the cave realm in one breath. Senior brother Lu said that Qin Pingan's martial arts physique was unusual. In Tongyi's Hao, he was the strongest and had reached the highest level of martial arts. He had a chance to help Qin Pingan stop his downward spiral. Stop when you reach the golden elixir. Lu Taoji had no choice but to help smooth things over, explaining, "The vindicated people who were expelled by Cui Han were just our Xishan Jianin lineage and had nothing to do with Qin Bai and Xiao Pu's lineage. Their origins in Aquarius continent go, and you are not bound by the rules of the Great Li. If it were not for Xishan Jianin and Yingying Qingyi, who need to respect the orders of the main hall and have someone take turns to protect Master Qing, Lu would not have set foot on Aquarius continent again." Qin Pingan corrected with a smile. "It's just a gift to leave the country, not to mention expulsion. Senior brother Cui is very polite to Xishan Jianin's lineage." Xiao Pu had an upright character and couldn't bear to hear such yin and yang. She almost added fuel to the fire by saying, "How can the Great Li dynasty, which only has half of the continent left, care about the affairs in the south?" Lu Taoji first reminded Xiao Pu from his heart to keep his Taoist heart and not make mistakes. Then he continued to explain, "Xiao Pu broke through Yuan Ying's seclusion back then. The process was extremely dangerous. Her inner demons manifested. She was a woman with a destiny from her previous life. A man surnamed Qin. Later, during an assassination, Xiao Pu was chopped into pieces by a certain swordsman. In the boundary of Nagka City, she still failed to escape from the swordsmanship and became a ghost. So today I met Qin Jianxian, she just lost her temper. The inner demon was a man named Qin, but the one who cut off his true form was the swordsman named Qin. Now he had to deal with a man named Qin again, which was really uncomfortable." When Lu Taoji mentioned the sad past, the woman in the green skirt snorted coldly. Old things are old things, but for Xiao Pu, who has a stubborn personality, one thing after another is just like the events before him. Xiao Pu immediately looked desolate and said cruel words in the market, always saying that if you don't take revenge you won't be a human being, but she is a ghost, but she still can't take revenge. It would not be wrong to say that we are not together. It is true that she is a ghost and her enemy is still a living person and they have different paths. But now she is still walking in broad daylight, but he has long since disappeared elsewhere." Xiao Pu crossed the line several times, using his merits with the main hall in exchange for 2 or 3 pieces of information, and always using his charisma in exchange for guidance. Unfortunately, he still struggled to find him. No, according to this statement, it is indeed death and death in the literal sense. In front of Qin Pingan, he took a trip to Yushuan Kingdom and had his revenge avenged. As for her, if a person compares with another person, it will irritate a person to death. If a ghost compares with a person, a ghost will irritate to death. Qin Pingan said. Qin Pingan, a Taoist cultivator and swordsman, can understand it, but junior brother Cui Han and the new national master of Dali do not accept it. He glanced at Xiao Pu, who was from the cherry green lineage. Even the Minister of Criminal Affairs of a country refused. "You want me to be a county magistrate? If the invitation or persuasion fails, you will still feel that you are not knowledgeable and will not give you face. Who has the bigger face?" A female ghost fairy, Xiao Pu is also a top assassin from the cherry Tsing-yi lineage. She should have a Taoist heart as strong as iron and be as immovable as a mountain, and not have a will as weak as a piece of paper swaying in the wind. Xiao Pu remained silent. Just because senior brother Lu reminded her from the bottom of his heart that if she continued to speak out loud, Lu Taoji would break the rules of the main hall. In fact, there were 2 reasons which Lu Taoji did not say. The young swordsman in front of him is so full of Tao Qi that he has almost reached the realm of heaven and earth. He is extremely mentally strong, so his yang Qi is pure and scorching like fire. It follows the Qi and its momentum is like running water moving up towards the eyes. But for the eyes, so to the ghost, even if the opponent stands still, it is equivalent to a sword question. He, Lu Taoji, was in the immortal realm and had worked hard to cultivate his Taoist qi so he could deal with it indifferently. Xiao Pu was only in the Jade Pu realm so he could easily be led by Qin Pingan's Taoist qi and state of mind. The situation at this time is quite mysterious. When Xiao Pu sees Qin Pingan, the ghost can't help but hold a mirror to look at him. What's even more mysterious is that Qin Pingan is the man in the mirror, which seems to be able to affect Xiao Pu's state of mind, making him unable to control himself. Like a puppet on strings. Furthermore, Xiao Pu is the one who has the most entanglement with Qin Pingan among those who have cleared their wrongs. Whether Lu Taoji or Qin Bai, what they see in Qin Pingan's eyes is that he is a young hidden official and a disciple of Wen Sheng. So when we meet, we can discuss things in a relaxed manner. But this was not the case for Xiao Pu. She had seen a lot of Qin Pingan's affairs when he was young, so it was the most difficult for her to be calm. Of course, Qin Pingan is still young now. However, Lu Taoji believed that Qin Pingan had already thought of these two reasons. It makes no difference whether you say it or not. Lu Taoji said, the position of the leader of Xiao Pu's lineage has been vacant for a long time. Xiao Pu has been busy for hundreds of years and traveled to 3 continents. Especially during the war, she took the initiative to go to Tongye continent. This is to accumulate external skills so as to fill the vacancy. After Qin Bai left office, there has never been a person in the Taoist Xinjiai lineage who has both moral character and high Taoist skills. About 100 years ago, the main hall established a new Taoist Xinjiai branch for Tao Tingyi. There is a rule that the person with the highest merit will be the leader, the person with the highest realm will be the leader, and the person with the most spiritual power will be the preacher, responsible for finding fairy seedling seeds. Qin Pingan nodded. If justice is in the heart of the people, one cannot ignore the credit he deserves. He glanced at Xiao Pu again. Since this woman in green skirt is one of the 3 candidates to be the leader of Cherry Green E lineage, how high are the other 2 candidates? Xiao Pu glanced at him. Have you seen through the trap that you carefully arranged to restrict the landscape and recognized your true appearance? How about imitating that certain young prodigy who has been coveting Gongsun Lingling for a long time, and prefers an older plump woman instead of a slender young woman? No wonder he looked down on the stunningly beautiful Sui Jingqing back then. Is the path number wrong? Qin Pingan was smiling. First there was the excessive drinking and sex of the high toast, and then there was the wrong way of the woman in the green skirt. Your eyes are all on your buttocks. Perhaps he felt that the atmosphere was too solemn and there was no need to make the relationship so tense. Lu Taoji smiled and said, since we have not negotiated a deal with Qin Guosher, the immortal of the Yuan dynasty in Huzhou has also come to Chongyang Temple. After that, the affairs of the master's sect will be all over. It was left to Xiao Pu to deal with, and the main hall couldn't find any fault. I was happy and free, relieved my burden, and went to other continents to try my luck. To be honest, Qin Guosher and the Dali Song family helped Luo Luoshan select fairy seedlings for ground materials and practice martial arts. Geniuses may not be better than us. After all, the Great Li Court can only look for good talents and jade in Aquarius continent and Tongye continent, but we can work quietly for 20 years for a chief minister in the 8 continents of Hauran. By then, Luolu Mountain is closed and reopened, and the number of cultivators in the upper sect is probably only a lot more than that of the lower sect. Qin Pingan waved his hand and said with a smile, there are benefits to being busy and there is leisure to be lazy. There is no need to persuade Senior Lu. He stretched out his hand without hitting the smiling person, and was not surprised by the politeness of many people. Qin Pingan thought for a moment and said, with the Xishan Jianyin lineage from now on, whether it is here to secretly protect the way for the elders of the master, or to go somewhere outside the Great Lehuzu, there will be no problem if the Daidu people return to the mountain and the lintel of the gate is illuminated. However, there are scandals ahead and I will report this matter to the Dali Imperial Court. Lu Taoji, Xiao Pu and Jun Qing are all high-ranking scholars. I regard you as gentlemen of Mingyu Qingfeng. You must not treat me and the Dali court as fools. Lu Taoji heard that Xian understood the elegant meaning and immediately nodded and said, if we have a conflict with Nian Ganlang of the Dali Xingbu because of a certain monastic genius, members of the Xishan Jianyin lineage will take the initiative to give in and choose other disciples. Perhaps this is the reciprocity of courtesy and reciprocation. Sensing Qin Pingan's gaze lingering on him again, Xiao Pu could only follow up. I haven't become the chief helmsman of Cherry Tsingyi yet, so I don't dare to say anything for sure, but I will send a few words of advice to the main hall. When I met the Minister of Justice and Yen Gonlang who were out of Dali, I just had to give in. But whether this matter will succeed or not will still need to be discussed and decided by the main hall. I don't have the say. Qin Pingon nodded and said with a smile, the starting point of a business is not money but integrity. It's just that Xiaopu couldn't help but feel worried. More than once or twice, this person didn't look at her face but wanted to look at her figure. When a man looks at a woman, he doesn't look at the face but the breasts, and he doesn't pay attention to the eyebrows and waist buttocks. Is he really just like that thief? What Qin Pingon is really interested in is certainly not what Xiaopu misunderstood. But the robe of the woman in green skirt, which has multiple magic restrictions, seems to be a mountain treasure that starts as a semi-immortal soldier and may even reach the rank of an immortal soldier. And the more Qin Pingon looked at it, the more familiar he looked. It turned out that in the Hehuan mountain area, the real person Xianxia, who looked like a child, had a robe on his body and he looked magnificent. It was the treasure of the Jin-Kai sect that had been passed down from generation to generation. A certain abandoned disciple of Tianjun Chao Rong is himself a wordless Daoist book. Can help Xianxia get through the Yuming Pass. To a certain extent, he can ignore the restriction between yin and yang. After passing through the gate of hell, he can walk on the road to the underworld as a living person in the underworld. However, how far he can go in the underworld probably depends on the monk's merit and merit. The power of Taoism is strong or weak. However, the one worn by the woman in green skirt is somewhat different from the Taoist robe worn by Xianxia. It is not just because of its higher rank, but also because of the seven-dimensional celestial phenomenon of the sun, moon and the 5 stars of gold, wood, water, fire and earth. There is a left-hand and right-hand difference. The Taoist robe worn by Xianxia is left-handed, and the robe worn by the woman in the green skirt is right-handed. This is correct. The real Xianxia is a living person but Xiaopu is a ghost. They need exactly the opposite to reverse the yin and yang, and finally reach the same destination through different paths, and each can walk on the road to the underworld. Lu Taoji laughed from the bottom of his heart and said, Xiaopu, the voices of you and me can be heard by Master Chen for example now. As for whether the thoughts outside the heart can be seen through by Master Chen, I don't know. I'm not sure. Xiaopudeo was shocked and his face turned ugly. She was more horrified than surprised. Qin Pingon smiled and said, the realm is low. It's just that we are not far from each other. The moon is near the water and the tower is first, so I can barely hear the vague voice. As for the thoughts, they are so hidden that they cannot be seen through. We can only rely on guessing, which may not be accurate. Lu Taoji smiled and said, Master Qin really treats people with sincerity. Qin Pingon smiled and said, I guess this sentence is not an irony? Xiaopu sighed quietly, not talking about others, just saying that in her life, it seemed that anyone named Qin was not easy to mess with. I owe you the last name Qin in my previous life, right? Qin Pingon cupped his hands and clasped his fists. See you later, let's drink next time. Lu Taoji clasped his fists and said, the next time we meet again we will probably meet again on another continent in a foreign land. Then Lu will have a drink and see if the Xianxia drink from the second shopkeeper is real. Qin Pingon laughed it off, turned and left. The last time we discussed matters at the Confucian temple, Mrs. Xianxia from Zhuhai Cave Sky didn't say anything. You outsiders didn't count the truth or lies. Lu Taoji will return to Shirtai, finish his homework, and then leave Chongyang Temple and Aquarius Continent. When she turned around and took the first step, dressed in a green shirt and long gown, in an instant, the woman in the green skirt, who was originally resentful of herself, seemed to have been taken over by a dove. The robe, in an instant, turned into a piece of cleaning clothes in the hands of a woman who was pounding the clothes by the water, wrung out the stream water and twisted them into a length like a long rope, shaped like a short spear and a long blue sword. A straight line hit the back of the young swordsman Chen Guosher. The vision was overwhelming, too fast and silent. Lu Taoji just tiptoed and floated into the sky of the boulder. Just relying on his assassin's instinct, he felt something was wrong. Lu Taoji suddenly turned around and looked. The ghost fairy was stunned on the spot. Even though Dao's heart was as tough as his, he was still destined to be unable to stop him, but Lu Taoji didn't just sit there. As the situation got worse, he wanted to drag Xiaopu's soul back and keep it where it was. Even if this move would tear her soul and robe apart and damage her foundation, it would be better than Xiaopu taking action again, losing his mind and going crazy, and having a life-threatening battle with Qin Jianxian. In a daze, Lu Taoji felt that the heavens and the earth were rotating together, and the scene in his eyes changed again and again as if someone was holding his head and staring at the dozen or so picture scrolls and albums on the table. Finally, Lu Taoji was in the vast and endless void, with a colorful Milky Way, dazzling stars and a long golden bridge spanning the realm of Taishu. The assassination of Xiao Pu's soul together with the green skirt was unstoppable. Lu Taoji repeatedly made seals and assisted with swordsmanship, but found that he could not stop Xiao Pu's soul at all. All he could do was watch helplessly as the Xian force burst open all the fantasy worlds as thin as paper, making a series of tiny tearing sounds. Then he broke through the dense sword array, talisman array and thunder array that the opponent had temporarily set up. Like the powerful fists protected by the gods' several robes, it was unclear whether they were spear points or sword points, were pressed against Qin Pingan's back vest. Passed through. That Xiao Pu still couldn't understand his hatred and he obviously wanted to take advantage of it, completely smash the body of this young swordsman and then crush his soul so that he would not only fall into trouble but must die. Perhaps it was the tenacity of Qin Pingan's body and soul, as well as the existence of the caged bird and Jing Zhongyue. The combination of the three was beyond the assassin's expectation. In the realm of boundless Taishu, the assassin sighed and failed. Just killing an immortal is so ridiculous. If Qin Pingan is injured but not killed, no matter how serious his injury is, it will still be meaningless even if he falls into an ordinary state. I knew that this person was not very old but was not easy to kill, but I didn't expect it to be so difficult to kill. What a providence. Is there really no shortcut on the road to the 14th realm of Hadao? Since the attack failed, he had no choice but to retreat. Lu Taoji seemed to be in some kind of drowning situation again and his breathing was stagnant. The picture scroll scene is like the tide receding. At the same time, deep in Xiao Pu's soul, the guest who was a mustard seed suddenly shattered into pieces, scattered into a wisp of blue smoke and was taken away. The long and slender river of time that he created earlier was the path of this person's magic. Indeed, there is no better means in the world than this to eliminate Dao marks and destroy evidence. That existence made a sound in his heart which was very surprising. It turned out that the young Yingguan actually stood there motionless. Instead of practicing a section of time water and a section of Huangquan road at the same time, he chose to be injured rather than be trapped by the long river of time. He followed the flow of water and reversed it, returning to him and Xiao Pu. Lu Taoji was in the same situ a moment ago. Qin Pingan spoke hoarsely and said distantly, "Wait." Everything returned to normal. Outside the Chongyang pavilion, Xiao Pu's face was pale and colorless, as if he was a mess from another life. Lu Taozi's heart was extremely heavy. If Qin Pingan had previously launched an army to investigate, he could have eased it a bit. Now that something like this has happened, how can he settle the score? At the most minor level, it was the Yingying Qingyi lineage and the Xishan Jianin lineage who had a grudge in their hearts and assassinated the greatly imperial master. At the most serious level, was it the three lines of the One Washers colluding with barbarian? Instead, Qin Pingan, who was assassinated, turned around with a calm expression. I thought I would be hit by Wuzhou Yijian from Qingming Tianxia inexplicably. I never thought that a ghost would be the first to take action. He just wanted to kill people. What was the other party planning? In the past, on top of the city, when Qin Pingan first took up the post of hidden official, there was a local swordsman from the Great Sword Qi Great Wall who also went on a murderous rampage without any warning. Having suffered a loss once, Qin Pingan would not make a second mistake, so he came prepared for his second visit to Chongyang Temple, wearing a few more robes and military armor. 1,000 days to guard against thieves, practice makes perfect. Even the female crown of the 14th realm, the sword passed by my continent across the world, Qin Pingan is ready to take the next sword. This time is not the 14th realm. If he can't catch it, it is better to hide in the Luoluo mountain, or I might as well move to the Gongda forest in the Confucian temple to read. Therefore Lu Taoji and Xiao Pu found this startless sneak attack thrilling, but Qin Pingan, who was assassinated, was okay. Why did Qin Pingan look at Xiao Pu's robe many times? Again, Qin Pingan is very disciplined and would not stare at a woman again and again. Generally speaking, if a new member of the 14th realm in the wild world wants to escape with Qin Pingan from the Haoran world, he must first pass the Lixing and Confucian temple levels. It is not impossible, but it's not big. Because the Lixing is outside the sky, staring at the green road. Therefore, after Qin Pingan thought about it, what he was most worried about was a sneaky detour, such as a great monk passing through a certain underworld road to assassinate himself. That's why Qin Pingan was so concerned about the robe worn by the woman in green skirt and was careful. Xiaopu was naturally unable to argue. Several times he tried to speak, but she swallowed it back. Lu Taoji was also helpless. How should he explain this to Qin Pingan and how to explain it to the Chinese Confucian temple? No matter how the assassin possessed Xiaopu, his level was so high and his methods were so secretive that it was unbelievable. A top-notch magic technique from a monk at the peak of the Ascension realm? No, we have reached the state of perfection only half a step away. Was it a 14th realm candidate, who deliberately targeted Qin Pingan in a deliberate and sneaky attack? Qin Pingan was indeed seriously injured in the battle with Ma Kuxuan. After such a beating, the injury was even worse. Qin Pingan coughed a few times, put his fist to his mouth, rested for a moment, retracted his hands and sleeves and said with a smile, "It's okay." He added another sentence to lighten the atmosphere, "Senior Lu, you don't need to think too much." Lu Taoji smiled bitterly. Could this be considered okay? Even Xiaopu wanted to give this person a thumbs up when he heard this. A man is so open-minded, and Yin Guan is indeed a hero. Qin Pingan thought for a while and explained, "Lu Taoji, Xiaopu, you really don't have to feel guilty. I have to thank Xiaopu for protecting a certain friend from disaster. Otherwise it will be replaced by Xu Jian Hu Xingyi, the female ghost Shui Rui in the capital." Qin Pingan had roughly figured out the situation, looked at the woman in the green skirt and said with a smile, "But Xiaopu really has to thank me once, and he was able to avoid a disaster with weapons, and there are no hidden dangers in his defective Taoist heart. It just so happens that he has to thank me once." Offset, we don't have to express our gratitude. Those who practice Taoism must rely on external objects, act according to their will, take risks and cross the boundary between yin and yang, and go to the underworld to look for clues about their enemies. They must not do it again and again. How can you always walk by the river without getting your shoes wet? It's not good to walk too much at night. Revenge is necessary, but it doesn't mean giving away a head to the enemy for free. If I guess correctly, the enemy surnamed Qin that you are looking for has either attached himself to this ghost in the underworld or was eaten up by it. Maybe every ghost in the world is a mountain and river ferry for them to fly across. The name, Qin Pingan, is like the green curtain wine flag of a restaurant in Xianxia Ferry. Xiaopu patiently listened to the teachings of a young man without getting bored. In the past, she had never been so modest with her most respected senior sister, Qin Bai. On the premise that she knew that senior brother Lu was here to protect the Taoist priests, she only said that she came to Beipingzu from Luzhou in Beiju and came to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom to watch Qin Pingan take revenge on the Ma family on Wuxia Street. Are these thoughts really my own? What a strange mistake. At this moment, Xiaopu felt as if a big stone had fallen to the ground in his heart, and his Taoist heart became a little clearer. Seeing that she didn't move, Qin Pingan could only remind her, "Xiaopu, to be cautious. It is safe to deliver the robe you are wearing to the main hall for refining." Xiaopu realized later. She quickly reached out to grab the robe, pulled it off, not daring to keep it in her hand, and handed it to Lu Taoji, who quickly put it into his sleeve. Lu Taoji did not dare to take it lightly. Using several methods of overpowering, she was still dressed like a woman in a green skirt, perhaps because of the coexistence of the blindfold and the robe, so her face and figure had changed at this moment, and she was as beautiful as the plump character. The sight of the young girl and the young girl in the pavilion so close to each other has long been covered with white fog, making it difficult to see clearly. Qin Pingan understood clearly. Such a hot potato, Lu Taoji accepted it immediately. The key is that the swordsman never changed his mind at all. It can be seen from this that the 3 lines of purging the wronged people are indeed intimate and act bravely and aboveboard. Qin Pingan's grudge disappeared. "I said politely before that I don't care, but now I really don't care about you anymore. This is called treating others with sincerity and being consistent in words and deeds." Lu Taoji seemed to be aware of Qin Pingan's temptation and smiled bitterly in his heart. On top of the Chongyang wall stood a young woman with her hair in a round bun. It was Pei Qian, who came here from the Qinghuang temple in the capital. Qin Pingan heard the content of Pei Qian's secret message, smiled and nodded. It's a coincidence and a coincidence. It turns out that Zhou Fangyu, the highest-ranking city god in the city god's temple in Haoran, happened to be taking General Fan on a private visit to Aquarius continent incognito. As a result, a ghost from the underworld committed a murderous act and it was right under his nose. This forced Zhou Qinghuang to immediately return to the temple of the city god in the divine continent of Middle-earth to sacrifice something that was forged by the ceremonial saint and canonized by the most holy master. Such a sacred thing that I have to go to Fengdu myself. Before Zhou Qinghuang left, he asked Pei Qian to send a message to help apologize to her master, and then made an exception to reveal a secret. According to Zhou Fengyi's derivation, this ghost that has been blocked outside the threshold of the 14th realm for many years is trying to kill Qin Pingon, the last hidden official of the Great Sword Qi Wall from the side of heaven, which is neither good nor evil and impartial. Taking the place of all the souls of the demons who died on the Sword Qi Great Wall in the wild world, it is like helping them redress their grievances and earn a large amount of Yinda, which can be used as the basis for one's own 14th realm of Hadao. With this cost, on the ghost path, it is possible to help him take one more step. As for the identity of the ghost, it is not suitable to be revealed for the time being. But regarding this matter, Fengdu in the underworld and the Qinghuang temple in the human world promised to give an explanation. Previously, there was indeed a majestic voice as loud as thunder, in the Huawei land that was not under the jurisdiction of Fengdu, resounding throughout the vast territory of the small half-underworld. I want to eradicate a demon for the world and kill Qin Pingon, a living person in the world. Before the endless trillions of ghosts in the underworld came to their senses, the sound gradually faded away. Afterwards, countless walking ghosts who were originally from the wild monster clan raised their heads and looked around, noisy and excited, waiting for good news. The wait has been fruitless and I don't know if Qin Pingon has been killed or not. Under the scolding and whipping of the ghosts from the underworld on the road, they had no choice but to continue moving forward. The candidate ghost of the 14th realm used several life-saving means that greatly damaged his Taoist practice. He abandoned the Taoist temple and fled again and has disappeared since then. Zhou Fengyu showed his majestic appearance, raising one arm high, holding a divine object, like holding a blazing sun in his hand, clearing the way, melting endless darkness with infinite light, and carrying 4 gods including Gon, Lu, Fan and Xia the general, together with several kings from a certain palace in Fengdu, rushed to the dojo where the ghost had abandoned themselves. Pei Qian asked worriedly, "Master, are you okay?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "This is a small injury. Even if it's drizzling, Master won't be rolling around in pain and losing his master's demeanor." Pei Qian grinned. Qin Pingon and Lu Taoji said goodbye, shrunk to the top of the wall, then jumped off the wall with Pei Qian and walked towards the small house. Lu Taoji, who looked like a burly Taoist priest, returned to the stone platform. Xiaopu did not want the 2 nephews to see his true appearance, so he used his blinding method again and sat on the edge of the stone platform. Lu Taoji smiled and said, "Why don't you say a few words from your heart, but you have to point the needle at the wheat on?" On his side, every word he says is not pleasing to the ears. Xiaopu's temperament can be known just by looking at her, Pima Zhong Zhuquan and Azu Xianxia, who have been close friends for many years. "I am thin-skinned and cannot imitate Zhuquan and Xianxia's dirty talk," Xiaopu said angrily. "Besides, there are differences between men and women. If senior brother Lu expresses his admiration for the young hidden official, it is a sign of sympathy between men. I am a woman, so I can avoid being misunderstood by him and wondering whether I am interested in him." Lu Taoji asked a good question. "Interesting?" Xiaopu didn't seem to answer the question and smiled sweetly. "It's meaningless." Lu Taoji laughed loudly. On the other side of the pavilion, the 2 children were very surprised. It was a ghost when their master showed such true feelings. Xiaopu asked, "He obviously agrees with our purpose of doing things. Being a noble guest of the main hall is a pie in the sky. Why did he refuse?" The knowledge of meritorious service passed down by Shuhu. He is the only one who has truly learned the essence and can be called the heir to the mantle. It is normal for a close disciple of the Wenxing lineage not to want to join us. Now that he has become the Grand Master of Great Li, why are he still unwilling? Lu Taoji said, "Mr. Qin has already given the answer." Xiaopu raised his eyebrows. "What's the explanation?" Lu Taoji smiled and said, "How does he evaluate Tui Qing?" Xiaopu suddenly realized. "I see. Boxing skills do not exceed the rules and knowledge is not as great as it is great. When it comes to Qin Pingan's identity, is he no bigger than a pure sword cultivator? Lu Taoji said. Besides, Qin Jianxian is in a special situation now. Sword training is his top priority and he cannot relax for a moment. Otherwise, he would not even refuse the invitation from the Confucian temple. We outsiders think that he is in his early 40s. He has become an immortal and his speed is fast enough. But he may not think so, maybe he is still too slow? Some old grievances, the outside world is just looking at the flowers in the fog and we don't know the truth. Practice boxing to risk one's life. Another village will be bright with dark flowers. One will continue the Chongqing Bridge and finally become a swordsman on the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Now that he is alive and returning to the vastness, there is hope for climbing to the top and seeing the road. It is really not suitable to be distracted. You need to be focused on nothing else. Gu. I have gone through all the hard work to get to the top. All I want is to defeat Xiao Xi with boxing and defeat another person with swordsmanship. The former does not matter whether I can succeed or not, but the latter must be achieved. Hearing this, Xiao Pu gently touched Qingquan and murmured, no matter how talented and smart he is, how can he win against that person? Lu Taoji said with a smile, you can't rely on too many external things and you don't have to think too much about other people's affairs. Xiao Pu remained silent and rolled his eyes charmingly. Qin Pingan was walking on the street with Pei Qian. After walking a few steps he suddenly figured out something. The mugwort hanging at the door of the house was given to the female ghost Shui Rui by Lu Qin. He could also go around it. Give it to Qing Fengxian, who was supposed to be the preacher of Bai Yun? Can it even be used to block the cross-border sneak attack by that Ascension Realm ghost? Lu Qin made a seemingly indifferent move. As long as Qin Pingan understood the connection, wouldn't he have to accept 3 favors from him at the same time? It seems that I really have to learn the calculation of inner rejection in the past. When Qin Pingan recovered a hidden sword talisman left in Chongyang Temple, this talisman was called Ripple. So if there was any slight disturbance, it could be recorded one by the talisman. It was one of the many talismans that Qin Pingan drew casually when he had nothing to do when he and Lu Qin were temporarily borrowing realms. This talisman is not small and the threshold for its use is very high. It takes an immortal to sacrifice it, post it somewhere and wait for it to happen. Qin Pingan shot himself in the foot before. He drew a box of talismans and hid them secretly. Because he returned the 14th level of Taoism, he fell to nascent soul and as a result none of them could be used. Now that my realm is high and I have enough confidence, it's up to me whether I use it myself, sell it to make money or give it as a gift from the mountain. And inside that box, there was a pile of large talismans that could only be used by Ascension Realm monks. Pei Qian said, they are back. Qin Pingan smiled and said, you don't need to follow. Just sacrifice the 3 mountain talisman and go back to Tongyi's Hao Dadu to do business. There is no need to worry about master. Pei Qian remained silent. Qin Pingan thought about it and could only come up with a lame reason and said casually, as long as the ultimate level is not reached, it will not be of much help to the master. So when I arrived at Tongyi's Hao, I practiced boxing while busy with the general affairs. You can't slack off in anything and you can't be arrogant and complacent because you think it's not difficult to return to the true state. You are now at the highest level of energy, the master has returned to the true state and Xiao Xi is even more amazing. Pei Qian hummed, don't worry master, I will work hard. Qin Pingan immediately regretted it and felt very distressed, so he immediately changed his words and said, there's no need to try too hard. Pei Qian didn't say anything, he just pursed his lips and slightly wrinkled his 2 slender eyebrows. Qin Pingan bent his fingers, gently smashed a chestnut on Pei Qian's head and said softly, you want to get out of a world that belongs to Pei Qian. From now on, when you speak and do things, you don't have to think about whether the master will feel what he heard or saw. It's wrong. Before the master came back he was doing very well. There is no reason why the master has come back, but he has become helpless. It seems that Pei Qian is deliberately hiding from that Jing Qian, and Jing Qian is hiding from her master. This is not good. Pei Qian was still depressed and silent. Qin Pingan put his hands in his sleeves and almost wanted to reach out and slap himself. He shouldn't mention Xiao Xi or anything amazing. No, this debt must be settled on Xiao Xi's head, no on his face. Pei Qian took out a 3 mountain talisman from his sleeve, suddenly walked a few steps faster, walked in front of his master, then turned around and walked backwards, grinning and saying, Master, let's go, see you later. Qin Pingon nodded with gentle eyes and made a talisman to forehead gesture. Pei Qian Nanyan offered the 3 mountains talisman and imagined 2 continents and 3 mountains in his mind: Zitong Mountain in the south of Aquarius Continent, Qingjing Mountain in the north of Tongye Continent, and a mountain near Yunyan Kingdom in the middle of Dadu. Her figure disappeared in a flash. After several flutters, he soon appeared on a mountaintop across the continent. Qin Pingon walked towards the house. It is indeed as Lu Taoji said. On the road to martial arts, wanting to stand shoulder to shoulder with Cao Ci and then catch up to him is of course one of Qin Ping's 2 biggest aspirations in learning boxing in his life, but the final result is far less important than the process. One day in the future, if Wen Quan can really beat Cao Ci, that would be an unexpected surprise. It seems there is no shame in losing. Anyway, Cao Ci can win my punch, which doesn't prevent me from punching Cao Ci in the face. As for practicing swordsmanship, the process is important, but the results are even more important. A sword that can defeat one person is enough. For example, this person is Yu Dou. Sword of Coming Chapter 1225. Chapter 1225. Killing and Ascension. Back at the house, before Qin Pingon entered the door, he heard Lu Xianying's loud voice, talking about how he was in swordsmanship on Zhenwu Mountain and what a hero he was. Guqin didn't bother to expose Lu Xianying's braggadocio and not write a draft. This guy went to the Zhenwu Mountain Patriarch Hall to block the door, but there was no conflict. The 2 male and female patriarchs of Zhenwu Mountain who rushed to the door were very respectful to the master of the Longquan sword sect, and even let him. Lu Xianying visited several forbidden halls that were usually not open to the public. When Guqin arrived there, Lu Jianxian was drinking tea leisurely. I just don't deny that Lu Xianying is quite human-like when he is serious. He can be said to be a swordsman or a swordsman, and the sect leader is full of style. When going to Zhenwu Mountain, Lu Xianying directly wielded his sword to the ancestral hall. When leaving, he took Guqin and walked down the mountain together. Facing an old master of Zhenwu Mountain who personally sent them to the mountain gate, Lu Xianying smiled and asked if he wanted to make up for the etiquette himself. The implication is that he can first pass through the mountain gate, then walk through the Shinto and finally walk down the mountain again. The old master who was responsible for adding lamp oil to the ancestral hall year after year smiled and said Lu Jianxian didn't need to be so polite. Before Ma Kuxuan came down from the mountain, he had already separated from the genealogy and left behind a number of extremely rare and valuable treasures. It was considered that he and Zhenwu Mountain had taken the initiative to repay the debt of preaching to Zhenwu Mountain without any debt to each other. Not only that, even the name and Taoist title of Yu Shiwu were cancelled by Ma Kuxuan on the closely guarded golden and jade genealogy of the ancestral master hall in Zhenwu Mountain. Guqin saw Qin Pingon slowly walking into the hospital. Why did he seem to be even more depressed? He asked in his heart. What's going on? Qin Pingon said, it's nothing. It can't be explained clearly in a few sentences. I don't have the energy to speak for the time being. I will review it with you when I have the opportunity. Lu Xianying didn't know whether he was generous or didn't see anything, so he waved to Qin Pingon and said, come in and drink. Qin Pingon said, if you can't drink, I'll take my share. If you want to drink more, you can do it for me. Lu Xianying laughed and said, whether the hometown wine is beautiful or not depends on whether it is close to the people in the hometown. I almost forgot, this is not a small town. When Qin Pingon sat down on the bench, Guqin looked outside the house and asked for no reason, can you understand it this way? Rain is actually raining money. Lu Xianying said carelessly, spring rain is as valuable as oil and long drought brings rain. As the old saying goes, it's not about spending money. Guqin was non-committal. Gu Lingyan was more curious about the young Yingwen's answer. I never thought that Qin Pingon would just echo, that's understandable. Guqin glanced at Lu Xianying. What was wrong? Lu Xianying was so angry. You two are half-hearted scholars who have never attended a serious school for a day, so you don't take seriously a serious scholar like me? Sensing Qin Pingan's eyes, Lu Xianying understood and shook his head. In any case, Lu Xianying had no great benefit from the beginning to the end of this disunion of the founder of the 3 religions. Guqin said without hesitation, Lu, when are you going to have the wedding banquet? To be precise, can you serve the banquet earlier or later? Lu Xianying sprayed a sip of wine at Guqin. Guqin waved his sleeves to scatter the hidden weapons. Lu Xianying cursed angrily, little slug, if you don't want to be the best man, just say so. Do you think I'm a stranger to you? Guqin said angrily, I don't care about being the best man, I just want to listen to Chongzhen. Lu Xianying was immediately defeated and said angrily, this kind of vulgar custom should be avoided if possible. Qin Pingon was a little strange and asked in his heart, Yushuan Kingdom is not close to Zhenwu Mountain. How do you get there and back? Did you use the Three Mountains talisman? Lu Xianying sneered and said, in his free time, Lu Jianxian created his own sword light escape, which is enough to open up the world, and his speed is not inferior to that of the Ascension Realm monks. Gukin said, there is a secret escape method in Baidi City, but it is expensive to use and has a fly in the ointment. Generally, genealogy monks in sects seek Taoism and Dharma, but in Baidi City, Gukin chose Taoism and Dharma to learn based on his mood and experience. Pu Lu and others, although they had already made guesses in their minds, when Gukin actually said the 3 words Baidi City, they still pretended not to hear this and pretended not to know who the young man in scholar shirt was drinking at the same table. Qin Pingon asked in his heart, is there something urgent? Gukin said, Lu Yuzhou has just promised me to serve as the deputy sect leader. Due to emotions and reasons, I want to go to the capital city of Yunyan State in Tonggishao to meet this future right-hand man. After saying goodbye to Man Huang, Gukin asked Yu Xuanfu to help deliver a few words and a gift to Lu Yuzhou. It is hoped that Lu Yuzhou can serve as the deputy sect leader of the new sect. In the future, everything in the sect, inside and outside from people to things, except for the sect leader Gukin, will be personally assigned and arranged by Lu Yuzhou. Gukin also gave Lu Yuzhou a small wooden box inlaid with hundreds of treasures. It was empty. However, if the ban is successfully lifted, you can talk to Gukan. Even if both parties are in the same continent, there are limits on the number of words and the time limit, and is directly linked to the level of both parties. Gukin has always had a temperament that dares to think and act. Since everyone is competing for talents, he will grab one of the richest Qigong practitioners in the future. The one he fell in love with was Lu Yuzhou, the future head of the Lu family in Ai Aizhou. On the other hand, the Shujian Lake, Oriole Island, Zhongsu and others are actually dispensable. Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. It's really not a trivial matter, little slug, I forgive you. If you have to hurry up and try not to miss being the best man to drink the wedding wine. It's up to Qin Pingon to persuade the wine, and it's up to you to stop the wine. As long as you are here, I am not afraid of being drunk anymore. It's a night of flowers and candles in the wedding room, so we can't sleep soundly until dawn. Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment and then said cautiously, Lu Xianying, can you and Xianxia have a wedding banquet with wine in this year's Mid-Autumn Festival? I turned over the almanac and asked the ceremonial saint. It is indeed a good day to get married. Of course. If the date has already been decided, just pretend I didn't say anything. Gukin curled his lips. If Master Wan had already made arrangements and Qin Pingon came to do this, he would probably not even think about being Lu Xianying's best man, or even thinking about having a wedding banquet. Lu Xianying's eyes lit up, he rubbed his hands and laughed. It's so embarrassing to ask the ceremonial saint about this kind of thing. If possible, I just say, what if, Qin Pingon, you have a lot of face now, why not just do it? The ceremonial saint invites you to come over for the wedding banquet. It would be better if you can sit at the main table and say a few words to prove the marriage. Qin Pingon had a headache when he heard it, and he stretched out his hand to rub the center of his brow. But he was thinking about this matter seriously. If he had previously agreed to Li Xing to become an official in the Confucian temple, would it be feasible? However, Gukin began to pour cold water on the hot-headed sect master Lu, and sneered, What, do you want Qin Pingon to drag the Li Xing to listen to Chongzhen again? Lu Xianying quickly turned around and said a few childlike words. Lu Xianying drank a bowl of wine, wiped his lips and said with a smile, The specific date for serving the wine has not been decided yet. Will it be August 15th this year? I will go to your sister-in-law to make the calculation first, and then discuss it with blacksmith Wan. Anyway, you two just wait for me to notify you of the date. Little slug, you just need to go to Tonggishao first. It's best to meet Lu Yuzhou and then establish the sect like a fool. By then the 3 of us will all be together. Is he the sect master? It would be nice to spread the word. By the way, Qin Pingon inviting the ceremonial saint to drink wedding wine is a joke. Don't take it seriously. But there is something you must do for me, that is, Ningyao must give it to your sister-in-law. Be a bridesmaid. I am not discussing this matter with you, I am giving you orders and you must follow them, do you hear me? Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. It was rare that Gukin did not create trouble. He nodded and promised, "Then I will establish the sect as soon as possible." Not counting guest ministers and some unnamed worshippers whose identities were concealed, the hundreds of monks with genealogies displayed on the bright side of Baidi City were divided into two by Juzhong and given to two direct disciples. This meant that the two sects founded by Fu Su and Gu Qin were about to equally share Juzhong's strong family fortune that had been accumulated for 3,000 years. It also means that Gu Qin, who has already become more mature, will suddenly become a prominent figure with the most say in Haoran continent. Lu Xianyang asked from the bottom of his heart, "The separation of Baidi City at this juncture, does this mean that you are regarded as Mr. Zheng's close disciple by default?" Gu Qin shook his head and said with great certainty, "I am definitely not Master's disciple." Lu Xianyang asked curiously, "Does City Lord Bai favor you more, or does he favor his disciple Fu Qi more?" Qin Pingon rolled his eyes. Lu Xianyang said angrily, "What are you doing? Is it wrong for a big brother to care about his little brother?" Qin Pingon raised his chin and said, "Keep going." Gu Qin took a sip of wine and said slowly, "It's not about favoring anyone. Fu Xi and I each have our own advantages and disadvantages in dividing the family property this time. Monk, from the quantity to the realm, the master has already calculated it very accurately. Except for Han Qiao, if Sei joins my sect, the entire Jinsui city will also be merged into my sect, two immortals. Lu Qiqing and Liuli Gu follow Fu Qi, and there is an unidentified Ascension Realm monk who hides his head and tail by the chief worshipper of the imperial city. This person will protect the sect leader Fu Qi. The owner of that golden green city in the wild world is the female fairy Qingjiao named Yunhu. She owns a lot of high-quality robes including water refining and banana leaf. And Jinquiqing itself is a money tree that can make money roll in. Zhou Xian kidnapped a fox country from the Su family in Qingfeng City. Juzhong moved the entire Jinsui city in the barbaric world. This is called peering. There is nothing to say about the rest of the Jade Pure Realm and Earth Immortal monks. Master believes that their achievements are limited. The only thing I feel regretful about is that I couldn't get an unknown female cultivator from Master from the 2 times I opened my mouth. Her realm is average. On the surface she's just a stagnant person. She is in the Jade Pure Realm but she has a special status. With her or without her the difference between a sect is quite big." Lu Xianyang clicked his tongue and was filled with envy. He picked up the wine bowl and said, "This family's inheritance is unprecedented. My mouth is watering after hearing this. I must drink to calm down my shock." Qin Pingon asked with a smile, "Does she have some kind of innate power?" Gu Qin nodded and said, "Similar to the maid named Ji Qing who followed Du Shanin." Qin Pingon understood instantly and expressed regret for Gu Qin. "This must be a pity." Lu Xianyang clicked his tongue and said, "My eyes are open when I see money but I want change my nature." The 2 ancestral coins of Xianxia are naturally treasured by the Lu family of Aiaijo. After all, the Lu family's ancestors relied on this mine to make their fortune. As for whether the great Tao has manifested into a human body, there have never been any rumors. So what is it? What appearance and posture it takes to appear in this world is a mystery. According to the inside story that the white-haired boy leaked to Qin Pingon, the ancestral money in the world is always in pairs, which means that there are existences like Chongqing and Jiqing in the world. Lu Xianyang asked, "You really don't want to drink?" Qin Pingon shook his head and said, 1 or 2 pots of fairy brew, a little bit of spiritual energy, and drizzle cannot quench the thirst of the human body and the world." Lu Xianyang frowned and said, "Is it so exaggerated?" Qin Pingon said, "It's okay. Just go back to the mountain and practice slowly. You can make up for it later." Qin Pingon was a bit overwhelmed by the killer spell that struck him with all his strength from a demon that had reached the Ascension realm. Even though he was prepared for it, Qin Pingon was still a little overwhelmed. Not only the pain of the skin and body, but also the chaos of the heaven and earth brought about by the agitation of the soul. Qin Pingon needs to carefully reconcile it, which consumes countless thoughts. What is really troublesome is this sinister sap, which makes Qin Pingon almost deflated, like a bird in a cage, just like a hole in the yellow river cave sky was poked by Yes sword. This left Qin Pingon with lingering fears. The key to such an unforeseen disaster was that he didn't even know his enemy's name, Daoist name or master's biography. Qin Pingon was so angry that he wanted to pretend to be heroic and drink a few bowls of wine on the table to make Lu Xianyang and Gukan slightly don't worry, I'm afraid of vomiting blood while drinking. If his merits weren't enough to support him from traveling to the underworld in Fengdu, would Qin Pingon really want to take Xiao Imo and Xiego to the underworld together, digging 3 feet into the ground to dig out that ghost, a candidate for the 14th realm? I walk up to you and let you kill me. However, Qin Pingon knew very well that since this ghost dared to act like this, it would not only be difficult to kill but also even harder to find. Not wanting to talk about these troublesome things, Qin Pingon changed the subject, looked at Gukan and said with a smile, "Where's Brother Longbow?" Gukan said, "I don't know where to find it. Chai Bofu is not on the list. I don't know where it was thrown by the master. He is also a wonderful person. When he went to practice in Baidi City, Chai Bofu fell into a state of being as good as eating home-cooked food. No wonder Qin Pingon would ask about this person, half a fellow?" Qin Pingon asked, "I heard that you accepted a student?" Gukan felt a little embarrassed for the first time. There is a Jade Pu realm wild cultivator in Fuyao Island. His name is Huang Huashan. Because of a trivial matter, Gukan has been pestering him for more than 2 years. He couldn't beat Gukan, who had many different skills, and Gukan at that time couldn't kill him either. Gukan was very patient and always followed her, specializing in making the other person sick, making them like a pair of crazy men and women entangled in love and hate. In the end, the yellow flower god was so sad and angry, "But you let me have a stable meal and a clean shit?" In the end, there was really no other way out, so Huang Huashan had no choice but to admit defeat and admit his mistake with Gukan. Gukan said that he was not sincere enough and refused to count, so we continued to reason. Huang Huashan almost collapsed on the spot. Later, Huang Huashan followed Gukan and performed the disciple ceremony. He changed his body, changed his previous temperament, and became very dignified in his behavior and speech. It's also an interesting anecdote on the mountain. For people who like wine, wine is a thing that can relieve thousands of worries. Wine is a prajna soup that can make people have wild dreams and become a Buddha. Lu Xianyang rarely talked about his time as a student at Chunruchen, and talked about his former classmates. I remember that on the day before a spring outing in Xianxia one year, there were 2 poor men in the same dormitory. They were not bad in origin, well-educated. They thought that learning was hard work and did not want to give them more money. They wanted to ask for extra money from the family. Can only buy books. So much so that the 2 wealthy disciples often joked to themselves that they had never worn silk clothes before they were 16 years old. They planned to boil a few eggs for food that day in boiled water. Since they didn't know how long it would take to cook, they used chopsticks to poke one of the eggs. If it wasn't cooked yet, they waited again. Lu Xianyang, who returned to the school at that time, was very happy to see him. One person said that he was useless as a scholar, and another person said that he was nothing more than that. Later, one of these 2 people wrote books and became a master of the School of Historical Geography, and the other became a famous Jiran family in South Pazuo. Unlike Qin Pingon, who gets more and more bored as he drinks, Lu Xianyang can't control his mouth as long as he drinks freely. 2 ounces of wine can produce the same voice and vigor as 2 pounds of wine. Qin Pingon suddenly stood up and said, "I'm going to meet a friend outside the door. You continue to drink yours." When I opened the door, the sky was blazing with clouds, and the sunset reflected a young woman in a plain horse-faced skirt. I don't know if it's because of the slight application of powder and dark eyebrows, or because the clouds linger on my face and don't want to leave. It turned out that the female ghost Shui Rui had the courage to come to this alley and pretended to be passing by. It didn't seem to matter whether she saw the Taoist priest Wu Di or not. When the door creaked open and she suddenly saw a strange man in a green shirt, she felt a little flustered. But when she looked again, she blinked her long autumn eyes, recognized the man's identity, and said with a blessing, "I've seen Chen Chen. Mountain Lord." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Miss Shui doesn't need to see anyone outside. Just call me Taoist Master Wu." Shui Rui didn't know how to answer. Just now she caught a glimpse of the bustle in the main hall. So many guests. Yes, it is him after all. As long as he does not close the door to thank guests and does not close the mountain to practice Taoism, no matter where he settles down, there will naturally be no idlers coming and going, and everyone will be in high spirits. Besides her secluded haunted house, the loneliness made her often sit on the swing, waiting for the sound of cars rumbling outside the wall in the dusk. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I won't stay here for long. I will go home soon." I welcome Miss Xue to visit Lulu Mountain when she is free. Xue Rui nodded and smiled, hiding his hands behind his back and intertwining his fingers, trying to make himself less nervous and not make the two of them look so unfamiliar. Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment and asked, Miss Xue, I would like to ask, when things happen in the capital, the boy next door will also have an official career. After that, does Miss Xue want to establish a sect somewhere in Yushuan Kingdom, or cooperate with the imperial court? Discuss, should we enshrine a landscape deity and enjoy incense sacrifices? Or should we travel first to relax and then find a place where we can practice pure practice? Xue Rui shook her head and murmured softly, I didn't expect it to be this far. Qin Pingon thought for a moment and said with a smile, for the first two options there is a person in the house who is a friend I just met. He happens to be able to help and can talk to the court of Yushuan Kingdom. As for the third option, it's not difficult, I also have friends taking care of the Five Islands sect in Shujian Lake there. Although Huang Lai had just resigned as imperial advisor, it was still easy to think of helping Xue Rui deliver a message to His Majesty the Emperor. Lu Xianying would not miss this kind of excitement. He rushed over and leaned against the door, watching with a smile. Guqin was afraid that the ivory would not come out of his dog's mouth, so he had no choice but to follow him. As expected, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Lu Xianying really didn't give Guqin any chance to be surprised. He quickly joked in his heart, Qin Pingon, you are now promising. I dare not take you to Lulu Mountain, so I have to leave it outside. Where is the beautiful girl in the golden house? He received an elbow from Guqin and Lu Xianying immediately grinned. Qin Pingon continued, if you feel that Shujian Lake is too close, you can go to Qinghu Palace in Tonggishao or Taiping Mountain. They are both good places with good reputations. Guqin smiled and said, if Miss Xue is willing, you can take a few more steps to Fuyao Island in the southwest and treat it as a sightseeing tour. There is a sect with a strange name over there called Back Mountain, which is very easy to find. You can find out who you are looking for by just asking. I am still the worshipper of the Back Mountain, so I can write a letter to help introduce you. Xue Rui smiled and said, Mr. Qin, are you trying to drive me away? Qin Pingon laughed dumbly. For a while I didn't know how to explain the reason. If he hadn't seen the woman in green skirt in Chongyang, but had replaced him with Xue Rui in front of him, even with Lu Chen's mugwort guarding the door, the consequences would still be unpredictable. Xiao Pu's realm is high enough, and a trip of time if the long river flows back, her body can bear the sequelae, and she may even have the opportunity to be a blessing in disguise and turn it into a great income. Xue Rui may not be able to accept this kind of surprise. In many things, Qin Pingon doesn't think that being bitten by a snake once and being afraid of the rope for 10 years is a derogatory term. Xue Rui looked at the two people at the door and asked, but sect leader Lu and Master Zhou Xian? As a result, both of them were unhappy. Because Xue Rui happened to say the opposite. Probably she felt that the leader Lu of the Longquan sword sect should be a gentle and elegant swordsman. Guqin, the madman from Baidi City, is a playful and cynical character. Qin Pingon smiled from ear to ear. Okay, Miss Xue said this so well that they both felt like two basins were on their heads at the same time. As soon as he opened his mouth, he couldn't help but cough a few times. Qin Pingon quickly put his fist to his mouth and stopped laughing. His face and eyes were still full of smiles. Guqin was okay and just smiled. Lu Xianying said aggrievedly, Miss Xue, we are familiar with each other, but I must say that once you said it, what look in your eyes, no wonder you would lure the wolf into the house and let Qin Pingon stay in your house. Guqin said something fair. Who is familiar with you? Miss Xue is. Before Guqin could finish speaking, Qin Pingon kicked him back. There was a shoe print on the gown and Guqin shook the gown with a smile. Xue Rui turned sideways, folded her clothes and saluted and said with a smile, Mr. Qin, I am here today just to say thank you. Don't say anything about kindness, especially not to outsiders. Don't forget when you've received a favor and it's best to tell others about it. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. Xue Rui thought about it seriously and said, as for whether to stay or go, we will discuss it later. If I have an idea one day, I will definitely not be polite to Mr. Qin and send a letter to Luopa Mountain immediately. The person who felt the most regretful was actually not Qin Pingon, but Huang Lai, who was listening to the conversation with his ears pricked up in the room. I wish I could run out the door and beg her for something. If Xue Rui is really willing to stay in Yushuan Kingdom, whether she is to start a sect or find a landscape empress Dang Dang to build a temple, an ancestral temple, Huang Lai really just wants to have a word or two with Emperor Shuepeng. Does the female ghost Shui Rui owe a favor to former imperial master Huang Lai? Definitely not, but Mr. Qin, the matchmaking middleman, owed a certain favor to Huang Chongfeng. Does Qin Pingon need to return the favor? Of course there is no need for it, and even if Qin Pingon gives it, Huang Lai will never accept it. As long as he doesn't accept it, he will have an extra iron coupon for the alchemy book given by the sect master, which is equivalent to an extra gold medal for immunity from death. Huang Lai was wondering whether she should say hello to Emperor Shuepeng and the imperial court secretly help her. Gu Kan, who had his back to the hall, said from his heart, Huang Zongfeng, I advise you not to add any unnecessary extravagance. Huang Lai was horrified when his thoughts were read, and he accused him repeatedly. Shui Rui came out of the alley, picked up her skirt and a pair of embroidered shoes and chose a dry place on the street to settle down. Of course she sincerely thanked and respected Mr. Qin. But for some reason she still felt that the Taoist priest Wu Di, who was generous, was more interesting and approachable. There is no wine table in life, but the cup should always be filled with wine. Qin Pingon packed some soft parcels and packed them into something within easy reach. Of course he did not forget the fortune-telling stall that could be disassembled and reassembled. If you have many skills, you will not be overwhelmed. In the future, when you go out, in addition to working as a baggage owner, you can also go back to your old business and set up a stall to make money. Qin Pingon asked, What do you say? Should we go directly to Tongyi's Hao? Or go to Nujiadu and wait for a cross-continental ferry? Gukin said, Go to Nujiao ferry. Lu Xianying asked lazily, How do we go back? The 3-mountain talisman is too precious and we can't use it more. We have to save some money. If it were just the 3 of them, it would be okay even if they didn't use the 3-mountain talisman or the sword or the wind. Gukin said, I have a Liuxiao boat which is not slow. After leaving the capital we can take the boat back to Nujiadu. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue in surprise. This is a good thing. Have you ever heard of it? How did you get it? Gukin said, There are several secret warehouses in Baidi City that are unattended. I often go there to wander around and relax. One of the secret warehouses used to store treasures is this Liuxiao boat. It is idle anyway. Then he refined it and brought it out again. Lu Xianying was shocked and said, Then you are a domestic thief and City Lord Jing doesn't care? Gukin said, Since you don't care, you just don't care. Does Fuqi dare? He didn't dare. Lu Xianying asked, A lot of treasures on the Liuxiao boat? Gukin nodded and said, All of them belong to me. Huang Lai's eyelids trembled as the two sides did not use their true feelings in the conversation. As expected from Baidi City, the road is really wild. After that, they hid their bodies together, hid their whereabouts, and quietly left the capital of Yushuan Kingdom in the wind, arriving at a secluded mountain on the border of Xiao Mountain. Grandmaster Shen is currently in the Golden Body Realm and cannot travel far across the earth, so he is the only one who can be carried on someone's shoulders and travel far away. Gukin took out a palm-sized pocket fairy from his sleeve. He first used secret techniques to unlock the restrictions and then threw it into the air. Suddenly it was as big as a normal ghost ship hanging in the air. Lu Xianying boarded the Liuxiao boat, which was famous all over the world, and asked tentatively, Sect Master Gu, please ask Mr. Jing, does he still accept anonymous disciples? Gukin sneered and said, Do you think I should be my godson? Lu Xianying reached out and grabbed Gukan's arm. Besides City Lord Jing, are there any other ways? Gukin raised his arms and said, Crawl away. Lu Xianying said with a playful smile, Qin Pingon is injured. You feel sorry for me? How can I be a hero if you take it out on me? Qin Pingon asked doubtfully, Can you refine a huge thing like Liuxiao Zhou? Gukin hummed and said, There is a long-lost ancient secret technique in Baidi City, which specializes in refining objects and transforming them into emptiness. However, the threshold for practicing is not low. As far as I know, only Han Qiaos is proficient in this technique. In order to, after learning this Taoist technique, she scrapped a lot of artifacts on the mountain, including more than 30 magic weapons. I am more interested in this, but I still only learned a little bit and it can't be considered as an intrusion. If you want to, I will make a copy for you later. Qin Pingon waved his hand, since it is one of the 12 great arts she vowed to learn. Once you learn it, don't tell anyone about it. Gukin said, Don't you and her have a business deal? It's not like exchanging money for Taoism is non-negotiable. Qin Pingon glared and said, We are all people who want to be the leader of the sect, but they still can't understand the other mountain rules of the sect? Do you understand the difference between closeness and distance? Do you really think Han Xiaosa won't be sad? After giving a lesson, Qin Pingon went to choose a room to sleep in, and asked Lu Xianying to leave the boundary of Huashan before waking him up. Lu Xianying uttered an ouch and said, "You have good intentions and are scolded for nothing. Someone is feeling miserable." Gu Kan, who was clearly being treated as a fool for his good intentions, snorted, but his mood improved. Gu Kan asked Gu Lingyan to control the floating cloud boat. As for Huang Lai and Shenku, they could just choose a room to rest. Lu Xianying followed Gu Kan all the time, which made Gu Kan, who had his own plans, angrily said, "Why don't you just lift a toilet behind my butt?" Lu Xianying put his arms around Gu Kan's neck and said with a smile, "Let's say a few words of respect to each other." Gu Kan came to a room with many restrictions, opened the door and stood outside. "Pick a few things for yourself and then get out. I only have one request: you are not allowed to use the Qiankuan in your sleeves." Lu Xianying complained, "Why did I get such a tacky brother like you? Aha, I got rich." The house was filled with precious light, so dazzling that it almost blinded Uncle Lu. Gu Kan is about to close the door. Lu Xianying quickly stretched out his hand to hold the door of the house and said solemnly, "You are vulgar and I am aloof? No way." Gu Kan sat on the threshold and didn't bother to care about what Lu Xianying picked. He just took a few items and let him go. A bamboo basket with fish, a muntjac leg, a basket of eggs, half a drawer of steamed buns. When Lu Xianying gave these things to the slugs in Mud Bottle Lane, he didn't even blink. Entering the house was like entering a treasure mountain. Lu Xianying touched this item and rubbed his face against that item and was dazzled. Gu Kan didn't push him and just sat there patiently. Lu Xianying turned around and shouted, "Sect Master Gu, can you lend me a few things that are close to you?" If he didn't mention this kind of request, he wouldn't be Lu Xianying. Gu Kan turned a deaf ear. "It's bad for me. I can't watch it anymore. I really can't watch it anymore. If I watch it again, I will really have the intention of killing people and stealing goods." Lu Xianying covered his eyes with one hand and came to sit next to Gu Kan as if he was smearing. The two doorkeepers. Gu Kan said, "Would you like to take it? Be careful not to wait until I say something." Lu Xianying smiled and said, "Forgot? I am different from you and Qin Pingon. When have I ever worried about my livelihood? When have I taken advantage of you too?" Gu Kan nodded. Thinking back to those days, Qin Pingan's biggest dream was to do business with Lu Xianying and make money together when he grew up. He started doing things and let Lu Xianying make the decision. As for Gu Kan, it's even simpler. If he eats and drinks with them, he will definitely not be hungry, so he can just lie down and enjoy the happiness. Who made him the youngest? Lu Xianying carefully took out a jade plaque from his sleeve and handed it to Gu Kan. "Be careful not to break it. This is an old item." Gu Kan took over and asked doubtfully, "Give me a gift in advance for founding the sect?" Lu Xianying laughed angrily and said, "What the are you thinking? I'm showing off my wealth to you and I can't get back my place?" Gu Kan asked, "Is it an ancient cave that is not recorded in the records, or is it a broken blessed land?" Lu Xianying smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether it is a cave or a blessed land. Do you have it?" "Qin Pingon has the lotus root blessed land and I also have a small cave, but Sect Master Gu, you are a bit shabby." Gu Kan suddenly raised his hand high, pretending to throw the jade token. Lu Xianying immediately apologized and said, No, brother Gu, I will kneel down for you." Gu Kan casually threw the jade token back to Lu Xianying. Things that have never been seen in the world are rare. Lu Xianying caught the jade plaque with both hands, breathed a sigh of relief and wiped it carefully with his sleeve. It was called Shuitan Dongtian in ancient times. The territory is not big, but the mystery is not small. If it were not compared with Baidi City, the Longquan Sword sect, now headed by Lu Xianying, was actually not poor and had a strong family background. Moreover, it was famous in Aquarius continent for having small expenses and large accounts. As the last saint in charge of Lizhu Cave Heaven, Wan Qiong made a deal with Old Man Yang and secretly bought a cave heaven and a blessed land from the other party. But regarding this matter, only 2 people in the entire Longquan Sword sect know about it now. Apart from Wan Blacksmith, who went to concentrate on forging iron swords, there is only Lu Xianying, who succeeded the sect leader. Qian Cave, also known as Qingyang Cave, is not among the 10 major caves and the 36 small caves. The Misty Blessed Land is a middle-grade blessed land. There are no people inside, only mountain spirits, water monsters and charming plants and flowers. It really feels like a paradise. A jade plaque and a piece of text inscribed, "It is not the blue dragon that serves as the water supervisor. The land becomes the ravine and the water becomes the field." On one side of the seal on the side is engraved with, "As time goes by in the world, there are many hazes here. The blessed land is in the earth, in the people, in the heaven and earth, in the materials and treasures, in the cave and in the heaven, in the Tao, in the latent souls cultivating immortals." According to Yuan Qiong's plan, the Shuitian cave was handed over to Lu Xianyang and opened as a private dojo. It was regarded as a benefit that belonged exclusively to the sect master. It could be passed down from generation to generation in the hands of the sect master in the future. As for the caves obtained by each new sect master, were they acquired by the predecessor? Whether the sect master ruined it or enriched it, it all depends on their own fate. Yuan Qiong doesn't care about this. Children and grandchildren in the market have their own blessings, let alone practicing Taoism in the mountains and becoming gods. The Xianxia blessed land was given to Donggu, who was the first disciple, but in this case, it became a headache to know what to give to Zhu Haifeng Su Xiaoqiao and Hengshenfeng Xialing, who were both direct descendants. Especially when Su Xiaoqiao accepted a direct disciple, Li Xinyuan, Yuan Qiong became even more worried. A sect that can possess both heaven and earth is a beautiful thing that everyone dreams of. Before the two juniors on the mountain, the Longquan Sword sect and the Luopa mountain, only Xingao sect had accomplished this feat in Aquarius continent. Tianjun Qizhen also controlled the Qingtan blessed land and an unknown island that was not listed in the official list. Named Dongtian. The beauty of the cave lies in some kind of unexpected joy that can be encountered but not sought. For example, some Dao auras that come from nowhere and are completely traceless. Another example is that the fragments of a golden body that have been washed away and precipitated by the long river of time may even emerge from an ancient treasure that has been tempered by time and become natural and flawless. Therefore, as long as a monk owns a cave, it is equivalent to having an extra to reward rice. Eat the golden rice bowl. Lu Xianying said, "There is a magical function in this paddy field cave. It is a doorway that I discovered by myself not long ago. Sitting on the edge of the field, looking at the reflection in the water and then visualizing myself, it is very suitable for practicing swordsmanship in a dream, and you will get twice the result with half the effort." Taijiang Yuan guessed that Old Man Yang had a better treasure that could match my ancestral sword scripture, but Old Man Yang was reluctant to take it out. If I had known earlier that I would become the second master of Longquan Sword sect, the backyard of Yang's pharmacy is my second home. Gu Kanpai smiled and said, "What are you regretting? You just need to go and establish a good relationship with Li Huai. Maybe you will get unexpected gains." Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. "I'm not familiar with him." Gukan said, "Qin Pingon is very familiar with him." Lu Xianying laughed loudly. "You are so jealous it makes no sense." Gukan asked, "Have you ever heard of the illusion of Ren Jiabao mirror?" Lu Xianying nodded and said, "When I was studying in the Chunruchen family I glanced at a certain Jiguai Zongzao, but I didn't pay much attention to it. It seemed to be called Flying Spirit, which was regarded as ancient by knowledgeable people. Something forged by a certain Daoist? Why do you ask this?" Gukan gave a thumbs up and pointed to the room. "It's just inside." Lu Xianying rubbed his hands and said, "Brother Gu is kind." Gukan said, "Master said that the credit month has a good origin, and she has the best chance of becoming the predecessor of the bright moon." Lu Xianying immediately reprimanded, "Insolent. There are no rules. You can call my sister-in-law's name casually?" Gukan remained silent. Lu Xianying was silent for a moment and said calmly, "She is who she is and she doesn't need to be anything else. She wants to, I will help her. If she doesn't want to, no one can force her to do anything and no one can talk to me about benevolence, justice and morality. The importance of interests and so on. Jing Juzhong is no exception." Gukan smiled and said, "It can be seen that Master is just kindly giving you a warning to prepare for a rainy day, so that you don't want to be kept in the dark when things happen." Lu Xianying immediately clasped his fists and said loudly, "Mr. Zheng is so righteous, I have so much respect for you." Gukan rubbed his eyebrows. Lu Xianying shuddered and looked strange. "What's strange is that from beginning to end I never called Jing Juzhong by his first name." Gukan smiled and said, "Why, Master chatted with you?" Lu Xianying said seriously, Mr. Jing praised me for being young and promising, responsible and ambitious. Gukin smiled and said, as long as you are happy. He stood up. Just didn't close the door. Lu Xianying stood up and asked strangely, with the door open like this, are you really not afraid of attracting thieves? It is difficult to guard against domestic thieves. I, Lu Xianying, have a limited Taoist mind and I can't control myself anytime. Don't blame me for not keeping a close eye on you. I'll learn from Qin Pingan's way of letting go when things go well for you. Gukin left straight away and said with a smile, they are all your belongings to begin with. I don't know why I'm going to pick them over and over again, but I'm borrowing something so close to me. Is it fun? Isn't it embarrassing? Lu Xianying was stunned for a moment, stamped his feet lightly and asked with a tentative smile, is that possible? Gukin said bluntly, it's yours too. Lu Xianying raised his arms and shouted, Brother Gu is not stingy. Gukin turned her back to the guy, raised her arms and raised her middle finger. Some people don't ask for a full glass of wine but ask for a refill. Arriving at the formation hub of the Liuxiao boat, Gu Lingyan, who was in charge of the helm, changed his attire with snow-white skin and long black clothes. With her beautiful eyes looking forward to it, she asked, Master, have you really thought about choosing a location for the sect on Fuyao Island? Today it was rare that Gukin was willing to chat with her for a few more words. Fuyao continent belongs to a new chessboard and a new chess game. In fact, it can display its tricks better than Tongye continent. The old sect's power was wiped out by the wild monster clan. If it is said that it will be the sect was built in the barbaric world, Fuqi can do it, but Gukin in the Yupu realm is not qualified for the time being, so I won't pretend to be fat. Besides, the master's entrustment of the entire Jinsui city to me is also a clear indication. I don't think well of others, otherwise my master will move Golden Tsuiqing to Howren world, and I will turn around and return to the wild world. What's the matter? What's more, my years in Fuyao Island were not in vain. There are a lot of people who accuse me of being arrogant, but not many of them say that I am a bad person. Even if they heard about some of what I did in Shujian Lake in Aquarius continent in the early years, they thought it was nothing. Probably because they felt that compared to the wild monster clan, the raging rampage in Fuyao continent is indeed far behind. Chunqing, Su Bai and the others have to accept my feelings and can no longer regard me as a vicious person. In fact, if it were not for Chao Xi, we would most likely the whole army will be wiped out, but because he is Chao Xi, many people take it for granted deep down in their hearts. It is natural to be grateful to Chao Xi, but it is not necessarily true to say how grateful they are to him. This is how Chao Xi eats Chao Xi. Gu Kan, who did not have high expectations, instead took advantage of Gukin. She smiled and asked, the plan is such a calculation and the truth is so many reasons. Does the young master have any selfish motives? Gukin nodded and said, yes. She said curiously, I would like to hear the details. Gukin smiled and said, Fuyao continent seems to lack a character like Qin Pingan did to Aquarius continent. Gu Lingyan pretended to have a sudden realization, her cheeks were flushed like a naive girl, and she said shyly, young master, I have a small wish. If I can reach the Ascension realm, can you grant me one thing? Gukin smiled and said, as long as you reach the Ascension realm, I will lie still and ride as you please, galloping as you please. She said with a serious look, you have agreed and you are not allowed to go back on it. Gukin nodded and said, you remember to learn a few more Taoist techniques. This made her a little discouraged. There are too many experts in the 9 continents of Howren and the divine continent of Middle Earth, and no one dares to say that he is the leader of the Immortal Master on Izhou Mountain. Even if Fu Luyuxuan reaches the 14th realm, this will still be the case. Even Bai Yi, the most proud man in the world back then, would not think so. But the other 8 continents are very talkative. For example, Pa Di Feng Huolong Zhenren is recognized as the leader of both black and white in Luzhou Beiju. Lu Jubao from Aizu replaced Wei Shi, the master of the 72 peaks, in his early years. In Nanposu Island, there was once the mellow Confucian Chen Chunan who carried the sun and the moon on his shoulders. But now he has become Qi Tingji of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Tongyi's Hao used to be Du Mao, the Ascension realm of Tongye sect, but now he is Wei Ying, the Great Sword Immortal of Jade Gui sect. He did it reluctantly, but in fact he could not really convince the public. The status of Jing Hao, the Taibao of Qing Palace, as the leader of the mountain on the bright side of Liuxia continent is also a fiction. The real owner of Qinggong Mountain is Qin Qinglu. For Fuyao continent and Jinjia continent, No leader of either continent said this. In Aquarius Island, the whereabouts of Lu Yen, whose Taoist name is Chunyang, are still unknown, and he is still not well known, so he does not support the scene and belongs to the outside world. If we don't talk about cultivation and just talk about Face, someone who serves as the new national advisor of Dali with the identity of the last hidden official of the Sword Chi Great Wall is considered acceptable? Gukin put his hands on his sleeves and said, "Learn Taoism in Baidi City and be the best in Fuyao continent." She blinked her eyes and said in a soft voice, "Young master, it seems you are not crazy enough. He is just the #1 person in Fuyao continent." Gukin twitched the corner of her mouth with a smile on her face that was extremely unrestrained. One day in the future, Ziwu Meng, named Chunshao, will feel that it was a great honor for her to decide to be a low-key personal maid for Gu Kan, especially for someone like you. The best choice I have ever made in my life, bar none. She stretched out her hand and patted her conscientious tall chest gently. "Sir, to be honest, I don't think it's a great feat. It's far from the point of being so crazy." Gu Kan intertwined the fingers of his hands in his sleeves and said in a deep voice, "No matter how far Qin Pingon walks on the road from now on, I will walk side by side with him. No matter how high he stands on the mountain top in the future, Gu Kan will stand side by side with him." Gu Lingyan smiled and narrowed his smart eyes. "Young master, are you confident that one day in the near future, you will reach the 14th realm?" The young man in Confucian shirt smiled softly and said, "Well, see." On the top of a mountain in the wilderness, an old man wearing a bamboo crown looked up at the sky, opened his mouth wide and made no sound. He just beat his chest gently one after another. "It seems that if this is not the case, you will be out of breath." The old man cried with joy and tears, silently feeling the strong luck rolling in between heaven and earth. 14. This is 14. There is no unstoppable path for man, and it has been 10,000 years and he has finally reached this level. Previously, Qin Qinglu visited Baidi City and had a few heart-to-heart conversations with his good disciple Jing Juzhong. It involves which wild monsters are most likely to take that step and be the first to reach the 14th realm. According to Jing Juzhong's calculation, the answer he gave was extremely unexpected. In order, they were Wang Youwu with the Taoist name Tiger, Li Guo, Bai Jing and Wumingxi. Just as Jing Juzhong expected, the first great demon in the wild world to successfully merge with the Tao was this beauty who was least favored by others. Wang Youwu didn't bother to wipe her tears, stood up slowly, clasped her fist high and said loudly, "Show me, thank you." In the vast world, in the Lu clan ancestral hall in Azu, in the courtyard of Sisui Guitang, Lu Kaishan stretched out his hand to catch the rain. He stood here for many days. It is natural for merchants to make money. Lu Jubao's road to harmony can be divided into 2 lines, one of which is relatively simple, which is spending money. Successfully join the Tao and reach the 14th realm. It is finally no longer impossible for Azu to win back the word, north, from Beiju Luzhou. Qingming Tianxiao, the co-sect master of Liangjingshan and Dachao sect, and a Taoist priest of Chaoga, Su Jun has repeatedly read the Su Wugui written by Master Bai Yijinglu these days. When Su Jun turned to look out the window, it was already dawn. When he put down the book, Su Wan was in the 14th realm for no reason. Then the first ghost of the 14th realm appeared in the world. Su Jun couldn't laugh or cry about this. In the Western Buddhist country, Pang Yuanji, a swordsman from the Great Wall of Swords, has been following a disheveled monk who seems to have never been tonsured for so many years, and together they have sculpted 500 Arhat statues for the temple. In addition to this, the monk will also sit cross-legged in the corridor outside the temple, looking attentively, carving a Buddha statue of unknown material. For some reason, the monks carve statues in the hall during the day and outside the hall at night. They do not eat or sleep and do not rest until they are haggard and exhausted, unwilling to rest. Pang Yuanji also asked the abbot of the temple, "How many years has this monk who never spoke a word been doing this?" The old abbot only said that it had been many, many years. Pang Yuanji asked again, "Is he practicing closed-mouth meditation?" The old abbot said that if it were not for the protection of the temple formation, every minute thought of that person would be like thunder from the sky. Pang Yuanji asked again, he had been carving Buddha statues outside the temple for so long, why didn't he carve the Buddha's face? The old abbot said that he was still looking for his true identity, and the Buddha statue he carved was none other than himself. Pang Yuanji couldn't help but ask, "Is it so difficult to become a Buddha?" The old abbot said he was afraid it would be even more difficult. Peng Yuanji finally asked a question: what hair do monks have? The old abbot said that it was all an obsession that he couldn't let go of. The more he cut off, the more he cut off, and the more he cut off, the longer it became. It has been raining heavily for several days, and the sky and the earth at noon are as dark as night. I wonder if it will stop for a few more days. Today Peng Yuanji is sitting near the monk. He usually carves images outside the temple at night. Does the monk break his own precepts? Peng Yuanji never thought of copying the words in the book, hoping to help the monk a little bit. For example, why bother lighting a lamp during the day and why burn a candle in the middle of the day? After hearing such words, the monk would stop the carving knife in his hand, raise his head, smile at Peng Yuanji and thank him. Later Peng Yuanji learned from the old abbot that the monk had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the world, and he could see all the recorded public cases. Peng Yuanji was suddenly startled. It turned out that the monk put down the carving knife in his hand and crushed the wooden statue into pieces. With his hands empty, he sat cross-legged, shook his head and murmured, "It won't work after all." Peng Yuanji seemed to be infected by the sad mood of the monk. This swordsman who had been away from home for many years also felt a little depressed. The monk looked at the dim rain curtain outside the corridor, and soon felt relieved that he could not become a Buddha, and it was not that he had nothing to do. He clasped his hands together, lowered his head and sang a Buddha chant. The young-looking monk stood up slowly, turned around and walked towards the main hall, crossing the threshold with one foot. Peng Yuanji recalled for no reason the past years in his hometown. It was said to be a story written by Chou Miao himself. Only Qin Pingon had read it and said it was well written. Chou Miao said that he had nothing to do and spent his time writing casually. "You have just read it." But after the young hermit official said so, the summer palace began to cheer and cheer, which made Chou Miao extremely sad. She regretted telling the story that had no ending at that time. Peng Yuanji now only remembers a few dialogues in the book. They are deeply remembered and unforgettable to this day. In the book, a monk whose ending seemed destined to become a Buddha asked a disciple next to him who seemed destined not to become a Buddha, "Disciple, while there is still daylight, we might as well continue on our way. One more journey through the mountains and rivers is one more journey. Master, there is no reason why we should not walk during the day and at night. Why not rest first? It won't be too late to start tomorrow morning. Disciple, we are traveling to the west to obtain Buddhist scriptures. How long do you think it will be before we can reach Mount Daliang? Master, you have grown from childhood to old age. No matter how young you are, it will still be extremely difficult for you to go around 1,000 times. As long as you understand, when you see your nature in your heart, when you turn around and look back, you will see the Buddha on the Lingshan mountain." The young monk retracted his foot, turned back to the corridor and walked directly down the steps into the rain. Every time the monk took a step, his hair rustled down on his own, and a golden lotus appeared under his feet, filled with brilliance. When he stood still, the heavy rain stopped. Rest is Bodhi. Turn around and become a Buddha. A sword light as powerful as a rainbow came from near Friazhou in Haoran Tianxiao, and cut through the gap between Yuming with a sharp sword. The woman looked around and saw Zhou Qinghuang holding a sacred weapon. She went straight to the dojo where the ghosts who had achieved the Ascension realm abandoned themselves. The territory of Fengdu is vast and vast, which is very different from the Yangjian. It is not just as simple as being separated by mountains and rivers, but there are hidden whirlpools of time everywhere. Ning Yao didn't say anything to Zhou Qinghuang and the kings of Fengdu palaces. He just stretched out a finger and scratched the center of his eyebrows, and the blood dripped like the eyes of the sky. She didn't even say harsh words to the candidate ghost of the 14th level. She just slashed it away with one sword. The world was densely packed with golden sword light, like trees and flowers in all directions. The enemy and us who are inexplicably enmity are thousands of miles apart. The bright sword light has passed through countless times swirling places. The sword light follows everything like a shadow, and ghosts have no way to hide. They are all ghosts and you still want to die, so let me die again. With just one sword strike, the ghost's head was chopped off. It was unclear whether it was swordsmanship, sword intention, sword technique, or kendo. The ghost and its true soul were blasted to pieces by the sword light. Ning Yao looked indifferent and just wiped away the blood between his eyebrows. The sword light dragged a long golden river, and the sword returned to its sheath with a clang. Zhong Kuei-tsai, wearing a bright red robe, came here, stood beside Zhou Qinghuang and the others, pretending to be calm, and laughed and said, "She is Qin Pingan's Taoist companion. Everyone knows about this matter, so there is no need for you, Zhong Kui, to go out of his way to explain to us who she is. Ning Yao pretended not to hear Zhong Kui's words, clasped his fists and apologized. Try your best not to do this again. When it was confirmed that Ning Yao had left and returned to Haoran, Zhong Kui said seriously, Ning Yao is still my sister-in-law. I have received their wedding invitations but you haven't. Zhou Qinghuang couldn't help laughing and asked, why didn't I hear the old scholar talk about this? General Fan nodded and said, that little nerd Pei Qian is Qin Pingan's founding disciple, she doesn't even know about this. Brother Zhong Kui, you can do it. Zhong Kui didn't look embarrassed at all. He held his belt with both hands and just said to himself, you may not know that as far as my friendship with Qin Pingan is concerned, at their wedding banquet, Ning Yao had to toast not only 1 glass of wine to me, but also 2 glasses of wine to me. 1 cup is too few, 3 cups is not enough. Zhou Qinghuang asked, Qin Pingan and Ning Yao are talking about each other. Do you really think they can't hear you? Zhong Kui shut up immediately. Earlier in the 100,000 Mountains, the old blind man in Gontang said that there would be a lot of water among the monks in the new 14th realm in the future, but Ning Yao was an exception. At that time Gontang was actually doubtful. He felt that the old blind man was partial to Ning Yao, so he said something casual. If this general worshipper of Lulu Mountain had seen this scene with his own eyes, he would probably know that the old blind man's words were essentially without any water. There are 14 realms in the world. Ning Yao casually slashed Fei Xing. Sword of Coming Chapter 1226. Chapter 1226 Husband, please raise your eyebrows. A speeding Liuxiao boat spreads out the mountains, rivers and land like a magnificent picture scroll. As soon as the ferry left the Beiyue boundary, Lu Xianyang shouted to Qin Pingan at the top of his voice. Qin Pingan, who was sleeping on the table, stood up and called Wei Bo by his name several times in his heart. He ignored him and walked out of the house, came to the bow of the ship and called Wei Bo by his name again. Wei Bo soon appeared on the ship. In fact, when he heard the god's call, Wei Bo immediately breathed a sigh of relief in Piyun Mountain. This revenge for Qin Pingan has been brewing for many years, especially the one against Ma Kushuan. Become a god. Because Wei Bo was in the Shinto, he was more worried than those who knew about this in Luopa Mountain, such as the old cook in Jing Dafeng. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was on tenterhooks. Qin Pingan had taken off his boots and was sitting cross-legged on the bow of the boat, shaking a red gourd. He didn't drink but just listened to the sound of the wine sloshing around. Relieved, Wei Bo leaned against the railing and asked curiously, did the Jisa Peak Sword Room not receive the Feijian message from the De Li Xing department? Qin Pingan said, I received it. I have read it. I am too busy with business to bother to reply. Wei Bao was furious. Just because you didn't reply, the entire Dali criminal department had to carefully try to figure out the thoughts of you, the imperial preceptor. Even His Majesty the Emperor had to ask the rights department to send a message to Pyeongchun. So that he had to go to the penal department Yamen in person. What kind of thing is this? Isn't the Emperor anxious about the eunuchs? Qin Pingan forced a smile, shook his fists a few times and apologized. One family doesn't speak the language of 2 families. Wei Bo asked, how to arrange them? Qin Pingan obviously had an idea and said, for the time being, let's put these 16 people in the Tiaoyu Mountain. Whether they are martial artists or monks, they are all in the same mountain. In a year or 2, if we really send another group, sword cultivators are still the same, there is no need to send them to the sword worship platform. No matter how big the Tiaoyu Mountain site is, just throwing 30 people into it is not a big deal. If I remember correctly, there are actually many ready-made buildings in the mountain with large and small houses. There are more than 100 rooms, which is enough. And since it is close to Lulu Mountain, I may also open Fiao Lu as a personal dojo. It's actually easy to choose a person to teach boxing. Jing Dafeng has been teaching boxing at Bianhan Palace for many years in Wuxia Xianxia. But the choice of preachers is a little embarrassing. Of course Qin Pingan can teach, but he is definitely not suitable. After all, it is not the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Here in Haoran Tianxia, the path of cultivation, whether it is practicing Taoism or learning boxing, if the starting point is too high, it will not be all good for this group of 16 people who are just starting out. As for the white-haired boy who is now the genealogist of Lulu Mountain, it is actually said that she is a scholar and a heavenly person. It is not an exaggeration to say that she can also teach. But she has a special status and is still inappropriate. Wei Bo took out a booklet from his sleeve and recorded the detailed files of those 16 people. Unexpectedly, Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "I won't read it." Normally, Wei Bo would have complained a few words, something like throwing away the shopkeeper and pretending to be addicted. But looking at Qin Pingan's haggard face at this moment, Wei Bo could bear it and forget it. Qin Pingan said, "In addition to Jing Dafeng being responsible for teaching boxing, you can also let Sun Yuanji be his deputy. Teaching boxing to others and helping others to box is actually a kind of learning boxing in itself." Wei Bo was stunned for a moment, nodded and said with a smile, "Good idea." Wei Bo said, "Lu Yong and Jing Qingjia are both in the mountains." Qin Pingan asked in confusion, "What is Master Lu doing?" Wei Bo said, "Help Zhao Zhu get a guest status with your Luapa mountain, the kind that has a seat in the Jisa Peak Patriarch Hall." Qin Pingan said helplessly, "This also requires Master Lu to travel across continents and visit Luapa mountain in person? Is this a special trip to congratulate you and give you gifts?" Wei Bo laughed it off. Qin Pingan said softly, "She has an extra surname. Guling Jing Qingjia. For the monks of the Wild Demon Clan, adding a surname to oneself is not a joke. Her nickname is Yuanhu and her nickname is Five Flowers Scholar. In the wild world, she is one of the few upper-level 5 monks who doesn't like fighting by nature and of course is not really good at fighting." Wei Bo smiled and said, "According to what she said, she recognized her ancestors with Mr. Xiaoma. The other thing is to find Guken to return to the clan." Qin Pingan asked a strange question, "Did she go up the mountain alone?" Wei Bo was puzzled, but he didn't bother to ask more. Just one person. However, anyone who is in the Jade Pu realm will almost always have a trick up their sleeves. But how many people and objects can be carried depends on the skill. Qin Pingan asked no more questions. Because there is a big or small secret involved here. When Qin Pingan was guarding the city alone, there was once a chariot with a group of wild female cultivators, Ing Yen Yen, heading north just to take a look at the young hermit official from a distance. Among the chariots, in addition to the descendants of the great demon, there was a female cultivator with a genealogy who was born in Jinsui City. It seemed that she was the most valued direct disciple of the city Lord Yuanhu, and she had the true inheritance. Wei Bo asked, "Do you need me to chat with Tong Wenchang?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "No, I have a better relationship with Tong Shinjun than you do with him." Wei Bo laughed and said, "Then blame me for being sentimental." Without waiting for Shanju Qin to explain a few words, the night-wandering god returned to Piyun Mountain. Qin Pingan returned to the house angrily, took out 3 gold and copper coins from his sleeves, put them gently on the table and arranged them in order: the Spring Festival coins, the support coins and the victory coins. An inch of time is worth an inch of gold, but an inch of gold cannot buy an inch of time. At the foot of the mountain, this is a word of encouragement to learn. On the mountain it has a different meaning. This gold is gold and copper coins. Master Yu Laozhen was indeed vigorous and resolute in his work. After attending the canonization ceremony of the Confucian Temple at Piyun Mountain, he returned to the Tianwai Xinghe dojo. However, Zhou Xian left a message that within a month at most, there would be someone from Taofu Mountain to lead him. He came to Luapa Mountain with 1,000 gold and copper coins, half of which he borrowed and half of which he gave to Qin Pingan. 500 of them were lent without interest and he could pay them back at any time. In particular, Zhou Xian also took the initiative to forgive the 300 debts Tianwai previously lent to Qin Pingan. So the real gap between the 1,500 pieces that Jing Juzhong said and what Qin Pingan needed to improve the rank of Feijian was actually very small, only 200 pieces. And this does not include the bag of gold and copper coins sent by Lu Su. It's just that those 36 gold and copper coins just made up a set of 36 heavenly gangs of the Big Dipper stars, which is extremely rare and priceless. If Qin Pingan just refined it into the water of the long river of time, it would be too much of a waste of nature. But it can be refined into a large formation without the need to ask the gods to come down. 36 divine generals are responsible for sitting on the banks of the long river of time. He also made a considerable amount of gold and fine copper coins from Yu Shiwu, which could have made up for the gap. However, since the two sides had temporarily become allies, Qin Pingan didn't have the nerve to stay. At first, Yu Shiwu refused to accept it. Saying that it was of no use, Qin Pingan tried to persuade Yu Shiwu to take it back with great difficulty. Thinking about it now, It turned out that he was not good at studying and did not truly understand the essence of Huolong Zenren's business advice. When doing business with others, you can't be too thin-skinned. In fact, in the previous battle with Ma Kuxuan, the fake Zhou Mi body was made of gold and copper coins. 1,000? 2,000? Where did Ma Kuxuan get so many gold and copper coins? From beginning to end of the fight, Qin Pingon never asked. In fact, after Ma Kuxuan was killed with a sword, this guy even gave up his soul at the last moment. It was obvious that he wanted to keep these gold and copper coins in the caged bird. Whether it was a relic that Ma Kuxuan couldn't take away or a trophy that was worth a battle, Qin Pingon confiscated it. Instead, Qin Pingon used these remaining gold and copper coins to help Ma Kuxuan open up a new path. In addition to protecting part of his soul and being reincarnated, he also helped Ma Kuxuan and his current body and the people he once belonged to. The connection with the divine way in the old heaven was completely disconnected. Qin Pingon separated a piece of his mind, entered the small world of caged birds, and came to the arch bridge at the foot of the Immortal Mansion ruins. His mind became one with the young Daoist priest. 3 figures arrived hand in hand, and Yu Shiwu asked directly, "What's going on?" In addition to Yu Shiwu, there are also the barbaric female cultivator Xiao Xing, and the Mafu cook Yu Qing, or the former cherry green Gongsun Lingling. Obviously it was not just Yu Shiwu, they were also curious about why there was such a big commotion, and there was a feeling of the world falling apart. During the fight with Ma Kuxuan, Qin Pingon was worried that there would be complications, so he detained the 3 Yu Shiwu here, temporarily losing their authority to travel freely between different worlds. Qin Pingon did not explain the detailed reasons, but just told Yu Shiwu a rough result. Yu Shiwu was stunned and speechless and then murmured, okay, this is best. Xiao Xing originally wanted to make a sarcastic comment about how he could achieve great things with a soft heart. But before she could say anything, his body instantly fell into the long river and almost drowned. Gongsun Lingling was quite relieved by this. After all, the crazy was a wicked person. The next moment, Xiao Xing, who had regained his freedom, came out of thin air behind Gongsun Lingling, rubbed her ears and temples, and then pressed against her breasts. On the back, Xiao Xing quickly stretched out a white lotus root-like arm, wrapped it around Gongsun Lingling's waist, and suddenly lifted it up a little, grabbing a heavy weight on his chest. The young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown frowned slightly. Xiao Xing stopped, tiptoed a little, swept back, sat on the bridge railing, stretched out his hand to rub the top of a pillar, and said with a charming smile, "It's about the same size." Qin Ping ignored this and said, "Many illusory worlds are seriously damaged. I will have to thank you for your hard work to repair them." Xiao Xing's eyes were hot, and he looked at the cook's bulging waist and skirt, which was stretched out. The curves were amazing and full. She stretched out her fingers to touch her scarlet lips and said delicately, "Master Yingguan, this servant and you can discuss something. Why not reward her to me, and I will work with you wholeheartedly, and it won't take long to keep her and nurse her to be docile." Qin Pingon narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Although the sky and the earth are dark and unclear, a bright red color oozes out. Xiao Xing immediately knew how powerful it was and kept silent, not daring to make any mistakes again. Heaven and man sense that if Qin Pingon is the well-deserved god here, then his mood fluctuations will be announced to the heaven and earth in different celestial phenomena. Qin Pingon looked at Gongsun Lingling. "If she dares to pester you again and delay your progress in creating a world full of golden color, I will let her learn how to write the word regret." Gongsun Lingling said, "I can work here willingly, but I need a salary that has nothing to do with fairy money." Qin Pingon said curiously, "Tell me about it." Gongsun Lingling said, "If I can guarantee that she will not continue to pester me." Xiao Xing smiled brightly and was not afraid at all. "When the time comes, I will not wear clothes all day long, and it doesn't matter if I don't touch your body." Qin Pingon was speechless. Yu Shiwa's scalp was even numb. Gongsun Lingling said, "Then let me change my request. Instead, let me provide more of this thing and let her have a period of time every day where she can't help herself." Qin Pingon said helplessly, "You all go and see the doctor. Before that, everyone should do their own thing and don't meet again. I will help you set up a layer of restrictions so close and thousands of miles away." Yu Shiwu was stunned and frightened. Xiao Xing covered his mouth and smiled sweetly. "Yu Qing, sooner or later you will be unable to bear the loneliness and take the initiative to have with me." Qin Pingon remembered something and said, Gong Sun Lingling, I just met Xiao Pu and Lu Taoji in Chongyang Temple in the capital. In the future, when the time is right, I can help you restore your identity as Cherry Chingy. Gong Sun Lingling remained silent, clenching his fists, and just nodded. Qin Pingon said, Yu Shiru, let's talk while walking. Yu Shiru wished he could get away from those two girls quickly and follow Qin Pingon up the sacred road. On both sides of the mountain road, there was still the oozing scene of corpses hanging with horizontal swords. Compared to Xiao Xing and Gong Sun Lingling, Yu Shiru was the last one to enter Qin Pingan's state of mind dojo. As he became more and more familiar with the basics of this place, the more he admired Qin Pingan's construction methods. He was amazed and eye-opening. Especially when Qin Pingan handed him the Guan ultimatum and the hub, Yu Shiru finally understood why Xiao Xing could describe everything in the world so quickly. He thought she was good at this and had a special talent. It turned out that Qin Pingan had already laid the foundation. Xiao Xing and Yu Qing only needed to select the components and put them together. For example, in a strange land that looks like the source of all laws, there are countless buildings of various types, dotted around, dense and orderly. Yu Shiru and they can control something at will. They can shrink it as small as a mustard seed or expand it like a star, depending on their own wishes. Just talking about Taoist temples, there are 62 Taoist temples and 81 temples in the script. The key is that each has its own characteristics. For example, we borrowed the statue of the 24 heavens from Tifo Temple, the statue of Lingguan from Lingxiao Temple, the mural of Chaoyuan dynasty from Dichunyang Wanshou Palace, the Linggu Temple that closed the mountain gate on horseback, and the lifelike 500 wood sculptures from Jingxi Temple in Nanping Mountain. Are hit. In addition, there are 2 originals of Taoist temples and temples that have removed all features, similar to the carved mother coins used by the government to cast copper coins. The dismantled objects are of various types, such as plaques, couplets and statues of gods. Murals, caissons, oil lamps, pillars, mortises and tenons, masonry. They are all divided into categories, formulated into high and low levels, and arranged according to the heavenly stems, earthly branches, etc. It is not just a simple patchwork, superposition and combination, but an establishment similar to Confucianism in a broad sense. A mere dharma is not enough for oneself. From the inner sage comes the outer king. A building as a whole can be dismantled into hundreds, thousands or even tens of thousands of fragmented and small partial components, and the 3 of them can just use them. That's why the Xiao shape is created so quickly. Nowadays, the few of them are certainly adding to the number of things in the world, but in terms of difficulty they are subtracting. Such fantastic ideas, such originality. Yu Shiru no longer felt admiration or awe, but an instinctive fear deep in his heart. In addition, there is a clear spring on the top of the mountain. The spiritual energy is as thick as spring water. It is detained here and looks like a quiet pool. Anyone who feels tired can come here to drink water directly, meditate, rest, recharge and replenish spiritual energy. According to Xiao Xing, so much spiritual energy from heaven and earth is equivalent to the spiritual energy reserve of an Ascension Realm monk. When they reached the top of the mountain, the ground was paved with green bricks. Qin Pingan walked to the water pool and said for no reason, Ma Kuxuan is a smart man and he is also an awkward person. Regarding his natal flying sword, Ma Kuxuan had already experienced it personally on the banks of the Dada River. But Zhou Mi, who was summoned by Ma Kuxuan's visualization, didn't know anything about it. There are actually many people who like to be at odds with themselves, others and the world. For example, Lu Xianyang never likes to say sorry to others. Another example is Song Jisin, who wanted to ease relations with his neighbors many times but was unwilling to take the initiative. Maybe Ma Kuxuan's awkwardness is that he refuses to talk to anyone properly, and refuses to ask for help even if he lives or dead. Yu Shiru couldn't guess why Qin Pingan said this. Qin Pingan did not continue to talk about this topic. Yu Shiru asked, Qin Pingan, do you really need external forces like us? Qin Pingan said resolutely, of course it is necessary. Yu Shiru asked, why? Qin Pingan said, let a person eat braised pork for 3 meals a day. It's not enough if he doesn't eat it. How does it taste? Does it feel good? Yu Shiru smiled and said, of course it's uncomfortable. Qin Pingan said, similarly, no matter how exquisite the mountains, rivers and various buildings I have built, they can be a step ahead of you in everything, everyone and everything. As long as you look at them too much and for a long time, there will be a feeling of boredom or even nausea. This kind of intuition is not very reasonable. So I need a few of you. Yu Shiwu sighed and said, I understand. Years ago I have been pursuing the state of error-free. But one day I discovered that certain errors are so valuable. Qin Pingon said slowly, someone needs to make mistakes instead of this world. The more mistakes there are, the more real and credible this world will be. Yu Shiwu praised, suddenly enlightened. If he could really get away from that disaster, Yu Shiwu would really want to go to Luopa Mountain to find a place, even if it was to be a janitor. Qin Pingon smiled and said, being the gatekeeper of our Lolu Mountain is more difficult than having a seat in the Jisa Peak Patriarch Hall. Yu Shiwu felt helpless. Qin Pingon stretched out a palm and said with a smile, those gold and copper coins that are temporarily entrusted to you for safekeeping? Yu Shiwu couldn't stop laughing angrily. It's obvious that the property has been returned to the original owner, so why did it become something that was kept for someone else? If you cut off the road and steal money, just say so. Why bother talking about borrowing money? Qin Pingon kept his posture unchanged, nodded and said, grab the money. Yu Shiwu took out a money bag from his sleeve and slapped someone's palm heavily. Take them all, more than 230. Qin Pingon said thank you. Yu Shiwu shook his head. Qin Pingon asked, fellow Daoist Yu, do you want to see a truth that is not the whole picture? Think about it before answering. Yu Shiwu said without hesitation, look. Why don't you look? I saw a Taoist tree standing in the middle of the sky and earth, with countless almost smallest ones hanging on it. Yu Shiwu was stunned and speechless. He could only be dumbfounded. He was really shocked beyond measure by the scene in front of him. It feels both majestic and stunning but also terrifying and shuddering. This Qin Pingon, regardless of his ambition, he clearly wants to recreate the world. And it completely confuses the boundaries between truth and falsehood, fiction and reality. What you see when you take a quick look at flowers is ultimately scrawled, and you often know what is happening but not why. Many truths that reveal mysteries in the world, whether they are still scams or have become facts, will always make people feel nothing more than that. But when Qin Pingon only revealed the prologue of the whole truth, Yu Shiwu was already unstable. Qin Pingon, who was still dressed as a Taoist priest at this moment, laughed at himself. There are impure paths to follow. A mustard seed returned to Lu Xiaozhou's true body. Qin Pingon put his hand between his eyebrows. After a moment, he leaned on the back of the chair and slowly exhaled a breath. Qin Pingon took out a yellowing book from his sleeve, placed it gently on the table and opened a page. It recorded a technique that the higher the monk's vision, the more he valued it. The sky and the earth are connected and the mountain walls are connected. They are as soft as apricot blossoms and as thin as paper pages. I point my sword and quickly open the door, following the orders of Mr. 3 Mountains and 9 Marquises. Looking down at these words, Qin Pingon was a little dazed after a moment, so he had to look away and close his eyes to rest. In this old book, the front preface and the following pages had been torn out. In addition, several non-connected pages had also been torn out in the middle, totaling 5. However, by chance Qin Pingon completed these 5 pages. This book is a ghost painting talisman that Li Huai gave to Qin Pingon at the Chinese Confucian temple. It was old man Yang from the drugstore who casually gave it to Li Huai. Li Huai then casually gave it to Qin Pingon, which was like giving help in a timely need. In her early years, the Empress Dowager Dolly received 5 offered to the court from the Liu family on Fulu Street. One page of them recorded a technique for breaking into a room through a wall. She has poor eyesight and is completely ignorant of the goods. She only regards it as a wall-penetrating technique. Qin Pingon, who was finally brought into the palace with Xiao Mo, got these 5 pages. Then Li Huai sent books. Going around in circles, it is truly a coincidence. Li Huai said that his head hurt from watching it and he was not being polite. As for studying, Li Huai was just like what Mao Sai said in his comment. He is powerless, but he is better than diligence in studying. Qin Pingon obtained this extremely rare and ancient Taoist book. Although it did not last long, it helped him a lot in his subsequent road building. A lot of knowledge can be seen. Qin Pingon can even use the 4 words, I point a sword, to combine this complete formula with swordsmanship. Pei Min as Pei Min's unnamed disciple Bird's Eye View Peak Lu Fong, and Lotus Root Hua Fu Di Jing Xin Zhai's fencing skills are closely connected, and even Qin Pingon guessed that Bai Shang, who was formerly Lu Yu in a small town, must have a killer weapon related to this fencing skills. Maybe in the future when they meet on a narrow road, Bai Shang can kill him with one sword. Opening Qin Pingan's caged bird's restriction on heaven and earth is really as soft as an apricot blossom, as thin as a paper page as the magic formula says. Bai Shang can easily pass through the wall and back with his sword, so Qin Pingan needs to take it easy and must be on guard. Bai Shang's hand. Qin Pingan also remembered a strange thing that he couldn't understand. He remembered that when he was an apprentice in a dragon kiln, he often went into the mountains with Old Man Yao to search for soil. Every time Qin Pingan climbed up, he could see a high mountain on the east boundary. But after Liju Cave fell from the sky to the ground, the mountaintop disappeared out of thin air. To be precise, the two mountains were lost together. The latter is called Shuangfeng Mountain, also called Potu Mountain, and Pingtu Mountain, about 50 miles away from this mountain, is also called Dongshan. Qin Pingan once asked Cui Dongshan about the whereabouts of these two mountains. Was it quietly moved away by someone with great supernatural powers, or was it someone who used the method of sealing the mountains to stay in place but be isolated from the world? Cui Dongshan didn't even no matter what happens, let the embroidered tiger take the blame and curse the old whenever he gets the chance just for fun. Qin Pingan had a splitting headache when he had so many thoughts in his mind. He had to quickly put his thoughts to rest, raised his arms and made a fist, and gently tapped his forehead to suppress the small world of his body. Qin Pingan stretched his arms a few times, closed his eyes, and gently knocked the back of his head on the back of the chair. Bai Zhe said that bearing the true name of the demon clan will be much easier when Qin Pingan reaches the immortal realm. It's really not a lie. Gukin stood in the corridor outside the door, hesitated for a moment and then gently knocked on the door. When Gukin entered the room and closed the door, Qin Pingan still closed his eyes to rest and said, "You can ask if you want." Gukin sat across the table and asked, "Can you really erase the memory of a qi practitioner?" Qin Pingan still didn't open his eyes and said softly, "It's easy to deal with a nascent soul realm. For example, the old woman Puliu, and the demon monk Shao Xing hidden in the Lotus Root Blessed Land. It's not easy to deal with the Yupu realm. I need to spend a lot of money. Without energy and aura, the key is to be persistent, just like wrapping a spark with layers of thick paper. The stronger the Taoist heart of a Jade Pu realm monk, the bigger the flame." Gukin said in a deep voice. "Being able to deal with the nascent soul realm is enough to shock the world. If you can erase the key memories of a nascent soul realm at will and prescribe the right medicine, wouldn't you be able to deal with the inner demons and have a fundamental cure?" Gukin said you. Qin Pingan deliberately ignored the word we, remained silent for a moment, shook his head and said, "Don't forget, the word I used at the beginning was cut off." Reaching out and scratching a mark on the table with his nails, Qin Pingan asked, "What do you use to fill this seemingly small but actually huge gap?" Just like cutting off a piece of flesh from a person, no matter how big or small, after all, it is not as simple as an injury healing and scarring, or a matter of making flesh from white bones. Qin Pingan said slowly, "Ordinary qi practitioners, sect genealogy monks, and even many earthly immortals may not know the truth, but there is no reason for you not to know." Gukin nodded and said, "Everything we see, hear, eat, smell, feel sad, happy, and think is actually recorded in our souls one by one. It is difficult to realize it without knowing it." Qin Pingan said, "If you are a lady, you will know what you have witnessed." This sentence is generally used to describe geniuses. In fact, it can be regarded as a side note of memory, so don't interpret it. Speaking of talent, for example, Wang Sun from Xuandu Temple in Qizhou under Qingming World. Gukan and Qin Pingan have such a tacit understanding. Isn't this misinterpretation a misinterpretation? Are you familiar with Lu Qin, or am I more familiar? Why are you holding grudges against me? Go hold grudges against that loudmouth Lu Xianyang. Why should I hold a grudge against a big mouth? I only care about small-minded people like you." Qin Pingan continued. "Secondly, whether it is Pu Lu or Shao Xing, the memory of Qin Pingan to them is not deep, and the involvement is not extensive. It is relatively simple to cut it. This is why I will send them to one of the reasons you have in hand is not just to help you make things better. Once they stay with me for a long time or stay in the Luoluo mountain to practice Taoism, they will almost completely lose the possibility of reaching the Jade Pu realm. I only talk about tampering with memories and deleting them. It is actually not too difficult to subtract one thing and add something else, and finally achieve the point where the fake is the real thing. The difficulty lies in being consistent with reason, context, and Tao. But with this method, we dare to hope to block all the disturbance of the inner demons of the monks in the nascent soul realm is nothing more than a fool's dream. We can only act in accordance with the times and occasionally do it to some people. Doing so is tantamount to taking the initiative to bear a share of the cause and effect. Who among those who practice Taoism does not pursue a path without branches or vines? Those who want to do this cannot. Weak-hearted. Those who can do it don't want to do it. Powerful but unintentional. Qin Pingon had one more thing that he didn't tell Gu Kan. Are there two identical snowflakes in the world? Jing Juzhong said he had seen it. This means that Jing Juzhong can let any Yuaning realm monk enter the Jade Plane at will without any inner demons. Qin Pingon even suspected that one of the purposes of Jing Zhezhong's retreat this time was to wait for the demon that could be regarded as the pseudo-15th realm and wait for it to come to Baidi City to discuss the Tao. Gu Kan said, I will try to establish the sect in April and arrive at Aquarius continent on the first day of May. Qin Pingon asked in confusion, why are you in such a hurry? Gu Kan looked at him. Qin Pingon became more and more confused. Gu Kan pouted, thank you for being so smart. Qin Pingon laughed angrily and said, don't be too pretentious. Gu Kan said, Lu Xianyang plans to set the wedding on the 5th day of May. Qin Pingon was about to speak but stopped and fell into a long silence. With a hard face he stood up, walked to the window and looked outside. Gu Kan's answer was something Qin Pingon couldn't even imagine. Gu Kan also turned his head silently and looked towards the door. Tall boy, straw sandal boy, little slug. In the past they often walked together on the field ridges, holding foxtail grass in their mouths. Maybe it was because their hometown was too small, their age was too young, and their vision was too small, so they did not dare to think too big about the future. Lu Taoji needed to immediately go across the continent to the main hall to cleanse the wronged, hand over Xiao Pu's robe, ask an expert to help peel off the cocoon, and carefully inspect whether there were any hidden traces. Before leaving Chongyang Temple he told Xiao Pu to carefully protect Master Cheng. He came to Aquarius Island this time to do 3 things. Protect Master Cheng for a period of time, spend the Yuan dynasty in Huzhou to practice in the mountains, and persuade Qin Pingon to serve as the chief guest of Xishan Jianin lineage. Xiao Pu asked, what should I do if the Yuan dynasty Immortal is left alone for a few years to sharpen her skills? There are experts in the main hall who have long figured out that the Yuan dynasty Immortal is a natural talent in the Golden and Jade Jungle, and must bring her back to the mountains from Aquarius continent. Lu Taoji nodded and said, although there are 9 out of 10 catastrophes on the mountain, there is no way to escape them. However, as a Taoist cultivator, by refining his spirit internally and accumulating external skills, he can indeed weaken the catastrophe to a certain extent. She still needs more experience in the world of mortals. Xiao Pu said, having said that, senior brother Lu cannot delay her best opportunity to practice Taoism. Lu Taoji said, I'm going to see her and teach her a swordsmanship first. Junior sister Xiao doesn't need to be tutored from the side. We go down the mountain to teach people as we go while they go up the mountain to practice Taoism, but they have to do it themselves. Xiao Pu shook his head. I have gone through this calamity myself. Now I don't have the courage to do so. I just hide here. The middle-aged Taoist priest is already burly and powerful, so he feels extremely oppressive, especially for a woman of medium stature. Looking at him he looks like a mountain. So Baoshi was extremely nervous. When the other party gave her the Taoist book, regardless of whether she understood it or not, the middle-aged Taoist priest just explained it word for word and her mind went blank. Zhou Xian, who was as tall and thin as a bamboo pole, went to a back alley in Chongning County and ran all the way back to Chongyang Temple. When he met the old Taoist priest, the young man had a look of regret on his face and said, Bai Yun and his grandfather have moved. I asked the neighbors and they didn't know. When I went to find the person who rented the house to them, he also said that he had disappeared, only that his grandfather and grandson were in the house and left some scraps of money. The old Taoist priest stroked his beard and smiled and said, if you don't get it by fate, you can't get it if you ask for it. It's the same for you and your friend Bai Yun. Don't be sad. I'll know tomorrow if we can meet again. Zhou Xian hummed. Song Juchuan, a short Taoist boy, suddenly asked, Master Jing, have you ever heard of the term crane's breath? The old man sighed and said, "How do you know this kind of Taoist terminology?" Song Juchuan was stunned. "Is it true?" Qing Fengxian said with a smile. "Of course, this sermon on the mountain is not popular, it is relatively unfamiliar. A teacher may know the saying crane breath, but ordinary Taoists may not have heard of it." Song Juchuan cursed endlessly. "That guy is so evil." The old Taoist priest thought about it and decided to visit the ghost house in Zhugan Hutong in Yongjia County. He dipped it in the talisman water and used the eye purifying technique. As expected, he saw 2 branches of mugwort hanging at the door, but they were not close to the door. Not having the shame to keep it secret, the old Taoist priest gently knocked on the door and soon a woman opened the door. She looked around and asked a strange question, "Taoist Master Wu?" The old Taoist priest was puzzled and said, "Is she Miss Xue?" The poor Taoist surname is Qing and her Taoist name is Huilu. She practices in Chongyang Monastery. I came here because of the reminder from Taoist Master Wu, and I took the liberty to come here to buy something from Miss Xue. Wormwood hanging at the door. Xue Rui was very puzzled. She looked and looked but couldn't see anything. Where is the mugwort? There was indeed a smooth-tongued young Taoist priest who used to be attentive to her and even said something about giving her a pair of mugworts. It's okay to hang calamus and mugwort in ordinary doors to ward off evil spirits and avoid ghosts. She Xue Rui as a ghost hangs mugwort in this ghost house? Thanks to that liar Taoist priest for figuring it out. But Xue Rui didn't care about this and was too lazy to talk to the old Taoist priest. She turned around and left. The door closed on its own. She just said, "You can just take it for yourself. Don't talk to me about money. It's just a gift, not a sale." With this move she immediately calmed the old Taoist priest, thinking that she was indeed a female ghost who could let Tong Shinjun set foot in this place. She was not in a high realm but had a very good temperament. Xue Rui didn't care about mugwort or Chongyang Temple. She was listless and without touching the ground, she floated all the way back to the swing and swayed gently, with a pair of embroidered shoes high and low. It seemed that as long as she didn't turn her head, there would be a Taoist priest holding a bowl squatting behind her. When she turned her head there was no one there. Looking at the flowers and plants, she rubbed her eyes and looked intently. She was sure that there was indeed a pot of flowers that the Taoist priest praised as the master of welcoming the spring. Her eyes were bright and her smile was like a flower, which seemed to fill the vacancy of the pot of flowers. Pei Qian traveled across continents to Yunyan country through a 3-mountain talisman, and sat on a large branch on a mountain outside the capital, drinking silently. From a distance, the lights of Yulin Ferry could be seen stretching like daylight. Pei Qian was not in a hurry to go to Tongyin Ferry over there thinking about something. Behind the back someone hooked his legs on a branch hanging upside down with his head on the ground, making faces and saying scary words. "Little girl, guess who I am, are you afraid?" Without looking, Pei Qian punched the opponent backwards, hitting the opponent's forehead. The big white goose pretending to be hanged swayed back and forth, crying out in pain. The young man in white with the mole between his eyebrows rubbed his forehead, turned around and sat next to Pei Qian. Cui Dongshan smiled and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Pei Qian shook his head. Cui Dongshan looked into the distance and murmured to himself, "A continent of mountains and rivers has been shattered. Those who should have supported the coffin and carried the coffin have become new ghosts. There is no smoke for thousands of miles, the dead are like a mess, the corpses are exposed in the city and fields, and the heads belong to the Tao. The flying swallow returns in spring and nests in the forest. I never thought that Tonggishao would come back to life so quickly. I just ask the immortal masters on the mountain and the powerful men from all over the world to stop being so oblivious. Otherwise so many people died and their death was really in vain." Worry. Pei Qian took out a bottle of wine from something nearby and handed it to Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan waved his hand. "Forget about drinking. I'll quit drinking today." Cui Dongshan immediately rubbed his hands and said, "There are a few things that I want to report to Senior Sister Pei. First of all, I have met Yu Lu and you are welcome. Yu Lu is an open-minded person. I simply misunderstood that he was in the old Lu family. Over at the dynasty territory he had seen the white clothes of his ancestor. The latter also gave him a box of elixirs which were very precious. They were the 4th party known as the 100 Days to Immortality, written by Gu Xianjun, and this Lord Gu Xian is the one written on the talisman just now by Senior Sister Pei. Bai Shang's only disciple was Zhou Xian, the beggar who pestered He Xiaoyang. He soon became one of Yu Lu's helpers in establishing the country. Yu Lu, a thief, asked me if I could do it. I am a big man. When faced with such a problem, how can you say no? In addition, Wu Yi, the founder of Huangting Kingdom's Xiang Mansion with the Taoist name Dongling, and the eldest daughter of the old Jiaoqing Longzhou, has already started to start over on the bank of the Ling River and start the mountain again. She has established the sect as the founder. If nothing else, the name of the sect should be Chunyang Mansion. She probably hopes that she can change one word in the future and become Chunyang sect. The idea is good, and Wu Yi also has something that is not much. Not long ago, my junior brother and Chao Qinglang brought those Tonghishao people who were willing to leave the Lotus Root blessed land and return to their hometown through a well connected to the Mirage city of the Daquan dynasty. Chao Qinglang found the emperor. That is, the sister Yao you are familiar with. The conversation was very good and the atmosphere was harmonious. Half of the Qi refiners and their descendants of the Immortal family were willing to have a relationship with the Daquan Yao family. They lined up all night to talk to Yao Jin. After that, various secret treaties were signed, and now that we have a backer, we can rush back to restore our respective kingdoms, return the God Lord to his throne, seize territory, and so on. As a reward, the Daquan dynasty will give our Qingping sword sect a ship named Thunder for free. Cars cross-continental ferry. After hearing this, Pei Qian, who was just drinking silently, finally said, "Why does it belong to your Qingping sword sect? It must be discussed through the Lulu Mountain Patriarch Hall before it can be counted." Cui Dongshan sighed. Those words were like the swish of a flying sword that poked countless holes in my little senior brother's heart. Pei Qian raised the wine bottle in his hand and said, "Stop talking about it and keep talking about business." Cui Dongshan lamented, "Sad first, then cold, it will be double the damage." Pei Qian rolled his eyes. Cui Dongshan held the back of his head with both hands, swayed his legs and said leisurely, "Over there in our blessed land, we have the very qualified female nun Sun Wanyan Luo Fume, the direct disciple of Pei Xiong from the Fox Kingdom, and the swordsman who has just reached the Golden Realm. Chao and I, Yuan Huang, who is determined to learn some boxing skills from my husband in Luopa Mountain, Wu Jiang, an unreliable but very reliable young hero, and He Qizhou, a female martial artist from Jiangzhou in Songlai Kingdom. They all, after completing the task of protecting the road, I feel that this opportunity is rare, so I am willing to go out and walk more and have a long experience in Tonghishao. I guess they are all on their way to Union country together. You don't know where's Mr. Demugwen with its miraculous preaching posture. I don't know how many men admire it and women admire it. Sir, he never makes mistakes. When it comes to the love between men and women, he is very clean and self-sufficient. He can't find any flaws, but I don't know how many mistakes he made. A woman's mind. The one who least misleads himself most misleads others. There's nothing you can do about it." Pei Qian grinned and the words made sense. The woman she once called Sister Yao, the current Empress Yao Jinji, isn't she one of them? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "As for our chief Shou who works hard and never complains, he is feeling panic now. Mr. Xiaomao, who may not be able to win the battle for the road for the first time, is holding back his breath and trying his best to prove himself. He brought 4 sword cultivators who emerged from the Lotus Root blessed land to Tongya continent earlier than Chao Qinglang and I. Chief Shou also took away a woman from the blessed land whose pseudonym was Su Jiaoqia and whose real name was Shao Xing. The dead man took a trip to Tianmu Academy. She and Wen Yuan, the headmaster of Tianmu Academy, worked together flawlessly and frightened many onlookers hiding behind the scenes." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "That's all for the time being. After the report is completed, I sincerely ask Senior Sister Pei to give instructions." Pei Qian just said, "I really want to travel with Master and Howren, but I can't say it." Cui Dongshan laughed and said, "So this is what I'm worried about." Pei Qian squinted and said, "Is it funny?" Cui Dongshan immediately put his fingers together and touched his mouth, shaking his head vigorously like a rattle. Pei Qian said, "Master asked me to send you a message. He already has a clue about the few barbaric remnants who disrupted the situation. He has a portrait in his heart, which is the barbarian swordsman with the pseudonym Daku. Master, please relax. Well, he has his own means, and if he has the opportunity to follow the clues, he might be able to find the Golden Core Realm Talisman Cultivator." Cui Dongshan followed the example of the white-haired boy and started to raise his arms and shout, "Sir, you are wise, you are martial, you are more invincible than the real invincible." Pei Qian said, "Ma Kushuan is dead. The master was seriously injured. The long sword Yayo was broken into 2 pieces, and the robe that carried the demon clan's true name was also torn. As a result, the master left for a jade journey. The Chongyang temple in the capital of Xian Kingdom was injured again for some reason. Master told me not to worry, but I really want not to worry, but I can't help but worry. Cui Dongshan nodded. Pei Qian said, Master, in this retreat, in addition to ascending to the immortal realm, he also returned to the final level of the true realm. Cui Dongshan hesitated for a moment and asked curiously, This is a good thing. Why do you still look frowning? Pei Qian remained silent and did not drink. Cui Dongshan said, In the outer world I am helping the Li Xing and cooperating with those experts who are as tall as they can be to prevent the 2 worlds from colliding. I am responsible for presiding over the formation, and I am very good at weakening the physique of martial artists, so I will follow Qi. It is actually a matter of course to be able to prosper and return to one's true nature. Pei Qian said dully, Master did not pass away as the strongest. Cui Dongshan grinned and said, This kind of thing cannot be forced. If it is, it is, and if it is not, it is not. What's more, now the 2 worlds of Howren and Wilderness are connected, and it happened to be a rare rain period in 10,000 years. What weird people and things will pop up. It's a pity that you didn't get the title of the strongest, sir. Of course, but it won't make you so depressed, senior sister, right? Pei Qian stared into the distance, wondering whether he saw yesterday and the day before yesterday, or whether he wanted to see tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Cui Dongshan shook his head and shoulders, shook his sleeves and said, Sister, don't worry, the who stole your master will be found by me sooner or later. When the time comes. Cui Dongshan woke up suddenly as if someone had strangled his neck and couldn't say a word. Slowly turning his head, Cui Dongshan asked tentatively, Senior sister, could it be that? Pei Qian nodded and said, It's my fault. Cui Dongshan even scratched his head and didn't know how to speak. If it were someone else who said such words to Cui Dongshan in person, Cui Dongshan would jump up and act like a big-mouth person. Who are you? What a scallion. You dare to say such big words. A martial artist at the level of the small end of realm. Are you sure that you have robbed my husband of his martial arts fortune? I don't know how high the world is, how many times have I been the strongest, how many martial arts gifts have I obtained? The answer turned out to be Pei Qian. So Cui Dongshan was a little confused. Pei Qian said softly, I originally thought it would be a small surprise for Master, but now it's fine. I really am a loser, right? Even if Cui Dongshan had hundreds of reasons in his heart, he didn't think he could convince Pei Qian that he didn't have to do this. It's totally useless. So Cui Dongshan had no choice but to use a useless method. He put his palm to his mouth and called his husband by his first name, whispering, Qin Pingon, Qin Pingon. Pei Qian was furious, turned around and glared, Big white goose, are you seeking death? In an instant, Qin Pingon seemed to know about the matter through Cui Dongshan's complaint, and without hesitation he immediately used some kind of magical power to temporarily release the white-clothed god, and spoke to his disciples from afar with his heartfelt voice, his tone difficult to conceal. His face was full of smiles. It would be shameful if I didn't tell you earlier. I'll save the chestnuts for now. Without further ado, I'd like to teach Master a lesson for a certain proud student who has committed a treasonous act. Cui Dongshan felt extremely aggrieved and wailed, Sir, you are happy and senior sister is relieved. Am I the only one who is not a human being inside and out? Ah. The series that followed were actually prepared by Cui Dongshan in advance and deliberately complained to his husband. But Big White Goose didn't expect that the senior sister didn't take action. Cui Dongshan, who was a little embarrassed for the first time, scratched his face. It was overheated and he made a mistake. Pei Qian raised his head and took a sip of wine, raised the back of his hand to wipe the corners of his mouth. His whole demeanor changed completely, his expression was no longer gloomy, and he said with flying eyebrows, Senior brother, thank you. Cui Dongshan took advantage of her good mood and said with a smile, In addition to Yu Xuanfu and Lu Suiyu, Lu Yuzhou is also in the capital. Pei Qian twitched the corner of his mouth. On my master's side I can pretend not to hear certain hidden meanings. As for you, Big White Goose, if I don't hide and hide, it's not because Lu Yuzhou likes me, what a big deal. What he likes has nothing to do with me, Pei Qian. Now that a girl is older she must get married? Even if she becomes an old girl, so what? In this world there is already a master and she has a career to go. Cui Dongshan clicked his tongue and said, If Lu Yuzhou knew what senior sister was thinking, he didn't know whether he should be grateful that he didn't have to be put in a sack, or whether he would be so sad that his liver and intestines would clench into knots. Pei Qian showed her signature smile. Cui Dongshan immediately changed his mind, jumped up, patted his belly, laughed and said, "The jejunum is roaring like thunder. I invite you to eat snails. Hot pot is also available. Let's go, let's have a midnight snack." Pei Qian stood up and said, "Let's go to Tongyin Ferry." Cui Dongshan pecked the rice. "Senior sister, you don't know now me de Sword Immortal is so cool and the limelight is unprecedented. Let's ride the wind together to Yulindu." Yunyan country is located in the middle of Tongye continent. It is a small country with a basin situation and a land in the palm of your hand. Although he was not a vassal of any dynasty, the only things he could get away with were the name of the vinegar city, barley wine and ink making. But now it is the most prestigious country in the entire Tongye continent. The Yunyan Qin family temporarily built a fish-scale ferry to facilitate the travel of immortal masters on the mountain. When the Fengyuan ferry docked here, Miyu, who did not leave home, just stood by the boat railing by chance. There were whispers one after another on the other side of the ferry, obsessed and blurred eyes, excited faces, and even there was the woman's scream. They worked tirelessly to wait and see, just to see Shangmi Sword Ferry from a distance. This makes Miyu very annoyed. Just those women from wealthy families in various countries. You are all cultivators. You shouldn't be so motivated by sex, right? Nowadays, there are not a few women who are fighting for Miyu, and their number is increasing, and they can almost form a gang in the capital of Yunyan Kingdom. As the chief worshipper of Qingping Sword Sect, Miyu, Mi de Sword Immortal, did not have a place in the temporarily established ancestral hall. The position was given to a young man named Chao Qinglang from Jingxing Peak. They thought about it and found only one reason. Probably this was the unique state of mind of a Sandan Sword Immortal. Thinking of this, they fell in love with the noble Mi Lang even more. They really couldn't imagine what kind of wind Mi Jianxian was on the top of the great sword Qi wall, who lived alone all year round, sleeping drunkenly in the clouds and clouds. The Qingping Sword Sect, which is a sect under the Luo Luo mountain and a dragon crossing the river, has Mi Sword Immortal in command. If we don't activate the mirror flowers and water moon, wouldn't it be a waste of natural resources? It's hard for us, Mi Lang. No wonder Mi Jianxian, the beautiful tree facing the wind, could not hide his desolate look every time he saw her before. Yes, true mentality couldn't be simpler. I'm just a loser. I can't do it, I don't deserve it. Look, Mi Jianxian is in a very good mood today. He is willing to drink with others and enjoy himself. My Mi Lang walks with one hand behind his back and twirling a wine bottle with on the other hand. He's really cool. Who can drink with Mi Jianxian at the same table? It doesn't matter what his status is as long as he's not a woman. Previously, Lu Kaishan of Ai Aizhou participated in the Qingping Sword Sect ceremony and generously sent a Tongyin ferry directly. Although Tongyin is not a cross-continental ferry, its cargo capacity is even better than the ink-turning dragon boat in Shangzong Luopa Mountain. Nowadays, this Tongyin ferry has replaced Fengyuan ferry and docked at Yulindu, and it has almost become a private residence of the Sword Immortal that belongs exclusively to Miyu. Tonight, on the second-floor deck of the ferry, Miyu set up a table with 2 bottles of wine. Feng Xuetao, who was drinking at the same table, cooked several plates of cold dishes to go with the wine. Feng Xuetao, who was born as a wild cultivator, is good at something, can also be particular about things and can make do with things even better. He is good at all kinds of crafts. Feng Xuetao joked. It can be seen that Mi Jianxian is very popular here. Miyu smiled bitterly and laughed at himself. If Taoist fellow Qingmi reveals his identity, he will only be more popular than a loser like me. Feng Xuetao said helplessly, "Forget it, now my reputation is ruined in the streets of Tonggishao. If I had known this, I would not have agreed to Daoist Jiang to be sure Laozi's Jade Guizhong enshrinement." This Ai Aizhou Ascension Realm wild cultivator, whose Taoist name is Qingmi, is dressed in a python suit, a white jade belt and an iron mace fastened to his waist. I followed Jiang Shangzhen on a trip to the famous Lulu Mountain. Only a few steps away from Feng Xuetao, there was a young man with a yellow hat and blue shoes, and a girl with a mink hat with rosy cheeks. Jiang Shangzhen revealed the realm of both of them. After that, Feng Xuetao, who was in the Ascension realm himself, was frightened. Returning to Tonggishao, he followed Jiang Shangzhen to the Yugui sect's ancestral hall. The process was extremely simple and it became a registered offering. However, Feng Shuatao found that everyone looked at him strangely. Feng Shuatao still arrived at the blessed land of Cloud Cave and went out for a walk alone, only to find out the reason. Now everyone on Izhou Mountain was talking about him. The outside world said that it was because of Jiang Thief's kind invitation that Feng Shuatao was willing to lower his status and serve as a worshipper of the Jade Grey sect. After all, his cultivation level was one level higher than that of the sect leader Wei Ying. Regarding this matter, there were rumors that Jiang Shang was so shameless that he knelt down with Feng Shuatao and kowtowed until his head was covered with blood and almost knocked off his head. One of the conditions Feng Shuatao put forward at that time was that he was a wild cultivator and a man. In the blessed land of Yunku, a woman must serve him every day to warm Feng Shuato's bed. It's quite reasonable. Since he can hang out with Jiang Shangzhen, a promiscuous and lewd thief who has a mother-in-law in every village, it's strange that Feng Shuatao can't speak so well. In his hometown of Azhu, Feng Shuatao had never been so miserable even after being a wild cultivator in Xianxia for so long. Even if he didn't take his reputation seriously, he still couldn't be completely shameless. Of course, Miyu heard these gossips and was very happy. However, the person involved was sitting across from him drinking, so he still had to be polite. He borrowed a lesson from the young people at the Summer Palace. Look at the two words freedom on the paper. How you write this word will tell you whether you are free or not. Feng Shuatao nodded and picked up the wine bowl. This is a good saying and it is worth leaving. Miyu raised the bowl and clinked it with it, then they both finished their drinks and said, My Taoist friend Yu Lao Qing has made more trips to that matter. Regarding the excavation of Dadu, from the early alliance to the establishment of the ancestral hall on the day when the second dragon raised its head in February, the early progress can be said to be smooth and a good start. Unexpectedly, a stick appears and smashes the talismans, causing people to lose heart. Whether you are asking for money or just to make ends meet, you cannot risk your life. For this reason, Miyu, two old sword cultivators from his hometown, Xing Yun and Lu Shui, as well as Huang Ting from Taiping Mountain, the Immortal named Long Men from Taishu Mountain in Middle Earth, and even Qing Tong from Xingyao Tower secretly moved out. In the end, Huang Ting was the only one who bumped into that guy by chance. Even so, Huang Ting still couldn't kill him on the spot. The other party's good luck is what is most hateful and terrifying. Two figures floated down beside the table and Miyu quickly stood up to greet them. Pei Qian cupped his fists and smiled, Chief Mi, Senior Qing Mi. Feng Shuatao nodded with a smile and returned the greeting. I have met Grandmaster Pei and Sect Master Cui. Pei Qian took out a cotton parcel from something nearby, handed it to Miyu and explained, Xiamili asked me to give it to you. It contains dried fish, melon seeds and preserved fruits. Miyu was in a good mood and the gloom in his heart was swept away. If sect leader Cui hadn't been present, Sword Immortal Mi would have really wanted to resign as the chief minister of Qingping Sword Sect tonight. Kill first and then report and rush to Luopa Mountain tomorrow. Are you scolding me for being a loser? Just scold me and promise not to talk back. When will I, Miyu, be able to shoulder heavy responsibilities anyway? Cui Dongshan smiled and stretched out a palm to pat Mi Dajiangxian's shoulder. Mi Dajiangxian is a man of great talent but little use. The burden on his shoulders is still light. Mi didn't even know how to reply. Cui Dongshan said with a playful smile. Fortunately, Sword Immortal Mi is one of our own and is reluctant to scold me. Otherwise, if I were in my shoes and scolded him, I would definitely say something like, the young man is so handsome but it's a pity that he is not mute. If I don't knock the out of you with my sword, it means you haven't had enough. Miyu was Miyu after all. Holding the package, he was still in a good mood. Except for Mr. Guan, if anyone can disgust me with words, it means I haven't cultivated my mind enough. Cui Dongshan shook his palm towards Miyu and said with a smile, Chief Mi, I'll give you a holiday. It'll be over for a month. You are allowed to go back to Shangzong and find Xiaomi Liwan. Miyu was overjoyed. Seriously? Cui Dongshan asked. If you don't mean it, how about you pretend it's false? Miyu smiled and said, if you take it seriously, you must take it seriously. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, I still want Jiang Shangzhen, does it rhyme? Pei Qian reminded, it's almost done. Cui Dongshan put his fingers together and muttered something. After a while, two chairs came swaying and stopped beside the table. Pei Qian put his hand on his forehead but he really couldn't see. I don't know who among the younger generation of Lizhu Dongtian first put forward the idea. and they are gradually recognized by the world as the opening generation. As the founding disciple of the young Yin Guan, an extremely young Zijing grandmaster who was able to become famous in Zhenjiazi early, Pei Qian was certainly among them and at the forefront. As soon as Pei Qian sat down, he stood up again and said, "I want to go to the lotus root blessed land." Cui Dongshan blinked. About to break through? Pei Qian nodded. Break the situation. In the lonely mountain, the boy in green and the girl in black were not sleepy. They were sitting on the stone table on the other side of the bamboo building eating melon seeds. The two sides bumped melon seeds together like wine bowls and then nibbled melon seeds. In the house where the door was never locked, the old cook was lying on a wicker chair and had a dream. He saw a butterfly standing on a phoenix hairpin, or it might be stuck on it. At the foot of the mountain, Zheng Dafeng spent the long night alone, unable to sleep, scratching his head and head, thinking that he couldn't do it. He was so skilled at playing hard to get. Could it be that the tricks written in the book were all lies? The Taoist priest Xianwei next door was reading at night in his study. It was a very serious Taoist book, and it was also a book that very few Xianwei could understand. The Taoist priest occasionally dipped his fingers in saliva and gently turned the pages. The Taoist priest and the words in the book felt like old friends at first sight. On a Liuxiao boat, Qin Pingon was lying on the bed, sleeping deeply and snoring like thunder. Even his sleeping posture was so regular, with his hands folded on his abdomen, his lips pursed subconsciously and his brows frowned slightly. Ningyao was sitting on the edge of the bed. She blushed slightly, twitching her eyelashes. She murmured something, stretched out her fingers and stretched her brows for him gently. Sword of Coming Chapter 1227. Chapter 1227 Weird Mountain God and Alien. It was rare for Qin Pingon to be so free both physically and mentally. He slept until he woke up naturally and had a solid sleep. Darkness and dawn only last one night, and I don't know how many flowers bloom and fall in the world. When he woke up, he noticed that on the corridor outside the house, someone's face was pressed against the door and Gukin was standing against the wall. This made Qin Pingon burst into laughter. "You two are protecting the formation and I am not in retreat." Qin Pingon suddenly opened the door and Lu Xianying fell into the house. Gukin looked strange. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "How can there be so many assassinations and I am a vegetarian at the level of my final state?" Gukan's expression was even weirder. Lu Xianying stood up and patted his sleeves. "Be careful, Qin Pingon, you are still not experienced enough in the world. Let's go." Gukan finally couldn't help but say something fair. "After you fell asleep, Ningyao came to Liuxiao boat and suddenly appeared. We didn't notice the slightest movement, but she took the initiative to say hello to us. Only then did we know she had arrived, but we didn't know when she left." Lu Xianying walked quickly out of the house, but Qin Pingon reached out and held his shoulder. He came to the corridor like a cloud and mist. Gukan also wanted to trick Lu Xianying and ran away. Qin Pingon also grabbed his shoulder. "Why are you running away one by one? Since you are righteous and confident, you have no guilty conscience and you are not afraid of being misunderstood by me?" Both of them were hugged by Qin Pingan's neck and they walked together in the corridor. They smiled and said, "You are such a good brother and I am deeply moved." Gukan said, "I just arrived not long ago. Lu Jianxian probably listened to Chongzhen all night." Lu Xianying cursed, "What the hell, I'm just here with my front foot and you're here with your back foot. If I don't come, how dare you come? I'm here, are you willing to come?" Gukan smiled and said, "It makes sense, everything you said is right. Walk to the corridor and come to the bow of the ship." Gu Lingyan stood timidly on the deck with the wind blowing and his clothes swaying to one side. His figure was graceful and his curves were exposed. Gukan frowned and asked, "If you don't steer the Liuxiao boat, why do you come here to drink from the northwest wind?" Gu Lingzhan was so wrong that he hurriedly told them from the bottom of his heart. "Ningyao came to me last night. She asked some secrets about the monks in the wilderness. Finally, she asked me to send 2 sentences to Qingyuan. The first sentence is according to the established for the route, go to Fuyao Island. In the second sentence, Ningyao only has 4 words, has killed the ghost." Because Qin Pingon was mentally weak before and did not review the attack on Chongyang Temple with the 2 of them, they were all a little confused when they heard the 4 words passed by Gu Lingxian. Qin Pingon had no choice but to give them a rough explanation of the reason. Previously in Chongyang Temple, there was a candidate ghost of the 14th realm that had reached the Ascension realm. Because it had been blocked outside the threshold of the Hadao for too long, It wanted to take a path to save money. External skills, relying on the shortcut of perfecting Inda and breaking through the realm, using the body and robes of a cherry green-robed ghost in Chongyang Temple, going against the path as a crossing across the dark and bright, setting a great ambition to declare to the underworld, to avenge all the wild ghosts who died on the Great Wall of Sword Qi and Howren world, it would kill Qin Pingon. As a result, I didn't escape, but when I carried it, it fell into the air and leaked its traces. The Zhou city god of Middle-earth rushed there immediately in the underworld. I don't know how Ningyao went to the underworld and how he killed ghosts. Lu Xianying stretched out his hand and patted Qin Pingan's belly. That's strange. Remember, your kid is fine just by beating his stomach. He rarely eats bad things. Why is it that as soon as he leaves his hometown he becomes acclimatized? He can't eat brown rice but can only eat fine grains. Already? Gu Lingyan was once again impressed by sect master Lu. How dare he eat soft rice in front of Qin Pingon? Gukan asked in a deep voice. In the underworld, kill a 14th realm candidate ghost? How did Ningyao do it? Lu Xianying chuckled and said, this is a very disrespectful question. Besides being a pure swordsman cultivator and entering the 14th realm, can you find a second reason? Gukan just looked straight at Qin Pingon. Guesses are guesses, but Qin Pingon has to give the answer to the truth. Qin Pingon nodded. Gukan sighed. No matter who it was, competing with Ningyao for talent and cultivation, it seemed that there was no genius in the world. After Gu Lingyan learned the truth, he was terrified. It's not a lie, it's just because her face can change in thousands of ways. At this moment, her face is Ningyao in her heart. She tried her best to stabilize her heart, stretched out her hand and wiped her face vigorously, and then her appearance returned to Ziwu Meng's appearance. When Gu Lingyan visited Howren this time, he was not so afraid of the hidden official Qin Pingon because Gukan was there, not to mention that she had never participated in the attack on the Great Wall of Sword Qi and had not even set foot in the world of Howren. Qin Pingon couldn't just do it because she was a wild man. Monster Clan just kill her with one sword. But Ningyao, a 14th level sword cultivator and the #1 person in the colorful world, killing a Yupa level monk with a barbaric base, isn't it just a joke? Lu Xianying touched Qin Pingan's head and let out a series of tuts. There's no such thing as an overnight grudge. My sister-in-law has already avenged you. Gukan didn't want an outsider to know more about the inside story, so he asked her to return to the center of the ferry and continue steering. Gu Lingxian was eager to do this so as not to be frightened and disturb his Taoist mind. Qin Pingon smiled and said, the second time I returned to the Guasian level, I didn't get the expected gift of martial arts. Lu Xianying asked doubtfully, I have lost something that should have been within my reach. I feel extremely disappointed. Do I have to force a smile on my brother's side? There's no need. Just cry and let the brothers be happy. Gukan asked, this shouldn't be the case. In this level of Qi you are the most confident and the strongest. Only in this level Chao Ci has no advantage. Chao Ci's martial arts qualifications are of course better than Qin Pingan's, but he is very energetic and pays attention to a lot. Because Chao Ci's qualifications are so good, it is easy to underestimate them and miss them. As it turns out, this is indeed the case. Qin Pingon smiled from ear to ear and said slowly, so when I came out of seclusion and came out, I was also very strange. I mistakenly thought it was the fate of the world. Strange people and strange things happened frequently. Some people got some great opportunities such as being raped by an expert. I took a trip along the river of time and the like and saw thousands of years of time and thousands of mountains, and then I was able to work hard at this level and become better than me, so I didn't think much about it. I started from last night. Cui Dongshan knows the answer to the mystery, and it turns out to be Pei Qian. Lu Xianying slapped Qin Pingon on the head. You're showing off. Qin Pingon turned his head to avoid it and laughed. Not long after he reached the top just because of Pei Qian Kai, and because she was his first disciple, Qin Pingon was once again in the dark. Inferring the reasons based on the results, it is not difficult to understand how powerful Pei Qian is, how rich his background is, and how spectacular his appearance is. During the years when Qin Pingon was a hermit official, Pei Qian first went to Beijuluzhou with Li Huai, and then traveled alone to Azhou Zhong to Shenzhou Jinjiazhu. Pei Qian has even been to more Houren-Jiuzhou than Qin Pingon. She has visited almost all of them. Moreover, Pei Qian's memory is far better than that of Qin Pingon, who has a good memory. Qin Pingon himself had noticed it a long time ago, and later Lu Qin specially reminded this matter in the Hehuan mountain boundary. This is also an important reason why Qin Pingon has been hesitant to take Pei Qian with him to travel to Hauran. When she goes out alone, her realm is high enough and she can walk more casually. When she is with Qin Pingon, she will be very attentive and serious. Don't forget, she can also see into people's hearts. As long as Pei Qian wants to see it, unless he is a monk on the top of the mountain, he will be able to see the scene of his heart connecting with heaven and earth. Therefore, Xuanji Yuxian, where Wufuki is located, is tailor-made for Pei Qian. She has a broad vision and a deep memory. As a master, Qin Pingon certainly hopes that she will see more about the great mountains and rivers and people's hearts and all things, lay a solid foundation for Qi Sheng, strive to break through in the future, be higher than herself and be better than others. But she was also worried that Pei Qian would be so focused and single-minded that if she watched too much and too long, she would be exhausted mentally and physically, leaving unknown consequences on her way to the top of martial arts. So Qin Pingon changed her mind again. The words, the most powerful, are actually not that valuable, so what do they count? Is this a typical old father's mentality? No wonder the old cook Xing Dafeng and Wei Bo chatted in private, saying that their mountain master Pei Qianyuan Shiziamili was very doting on them and they couldn't care less about them. Like a beloved daughter, I pity a certain boy in green, like a rebellious son who needs yawning and scolding. Qin Pingon said, Pu Lu and the others will follow you and you will decide what position and status they will have in the sect in the future. Guqin nodded and said, I know it well. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Huang Lai has been a national teacher in Yushuan Kingdom for many years, and it is inevitable that he will be infected with certain officialdom habits. You have to be more generous and patient. In addition to throwing him one or two rare Taoist books, help him point the way. We still need to help him peel off the worldly atmosphere and return to the raw jade. Don't think that just because the three of us are at a very high level now, each with his own vision and worldview, and all the people and things we talk about are on the top of the mountain, don't think that the word, Earth Immortal, is not the same. It's valuable, the Yupu realm is nothing, the Immortal is nothing more than that, and the Ascension is just okay. To put it bluntly, it seems that the most unhelpful moment on the ship is now. If he had gone to the Liju cave that had just shattered and crashed to the ground, the three of us would have stood together. Even the platoon may not be able to withstand even half of Grandmaster Shin's punch. Guqin said, remember it. Lu Xianying stood beside him and said, nagging mother-in-law, are you bothered or bothered? Is it the village schoolmaster who teaches the Meng boy who wears open crotch pants, or the father scolds his son when he returns home? As a result, Qin Pingan's shoulder was hit by an elbow, and the instep was stepped on by Guqin, who then twisted hard with his toes. Lu Xianying snorted and put on a posture that was full of anger. Come back if you have the ability. If Lu Jianxian makes a sound, he will be your grandfather. Qin Pingon put his hands on his sleeves and turned around and said, you two continue to recognize each other, I will go back to the house and have a comfortable sleep. Call me again when you reach the border of Chuzhou. Lu Xianying smiled and said, good guy, you really think of yourself as a master, you dare to use Lu Jianxian and sect leader Gu like this. Guqin said from the bottom of her heart, you intend to hold the wedding banquet on his birthday, the 5th day of May, and I told him. In my hometown and small town, the 5th day of May is regarded as the 5 poison day. Children born on this day are born to be brooms, stars and gods of plague. So Lu Xianying wanted to hold the wedding on this day and felt that this was the best day. Lu Xianying lay on the railing and said lazily, is this kid crying so hard? Guqin said calmly, it's okay. Lu Xianying asked, why don't you give Liu Xiaozhou to Qin Pingon? To be honest, Longquan sword sect and I don't really need this. He is a money man and his business is very big now, but he urgently needs this thing as the icing on the cake. There are only a few people in his sect and Blacksmith Wan doesn't like to talk about ostentation. Guqin said, a hot face is pressed against a cold butt. He won't accept it, so what will I get if I get on the pole? Lu Xianying was silent for a moment and sighed, I really envy you for having such a good big brother. It was rare for Guqin not to cause trouble. I hope that in the next 100 years, every time we meet again, we don't have to think about what to say, and we don't have nothing to say, only polite greetings. But Lu Xianying said something that was very embarrassing. I have always been curious, is the snot delicious? Is it salty and bland? Guqin said, do you still remember that early one morning I gave you a meat bun from Mao's shop? You actually even ate my boogers. Lu Xianying suddenly said, So that's it, I must have put it in a lot, no wonder, I just said that the meat buns tasted particularly good that day. Gukan smiled and said, the people in our hometown are simple and honest. Lu Xianyang nodded and said, I almost thought you and Qin Pingon are both heroes. Master Lu from Qinghu Palace didn't go out much when he arrived at Luopa Mountain. He helped his disciple Zhao Zhu to ask for the status of guest minister, just like an old man making plans for his descendants. Lu Yong was somewhat embarrassed. Jing Qingjiao is just the opposite. This fairy named Yun who goes out for a walk every chance she gets. There was really nothing she could do. Every time she returned to the house, she would pick out a proud disciple from her sleeve, Zhai Guangyun, whose Taoist name was Yun Yan. She would pester her master with questions. The most important thing was that Zhai Guangyun said something about the wheel of a car. Master, did you see Qin Yinguan when he went out this time? Has Lord Yinguan not returned to the mountain yet? Jing Qingjia didn't dare to let this direct disciple show up, or even let her take her sleeves off her sleeves. He could only restrain her, a little nympho, for fear that she would speak out and have a bad relationship with Luo Pashan. Although he had taken refuge in Baidi City, Jing Qingjia still felt that the Qi practitioners in the wild world were more clear-cut about love and hate than those in the Howren world. Nowadays, in the wild mountains, there are many women who admire the red-robed hidden official at the top of the city. Jing Qingjia often patrolled the mountain with Zhou Mili, who was honored as a mountain protector. Over time, Jing Qingjia gradually came to realize that the strangely dressed little girl in black seemed to have no taboo content in her chat, but in fact she was truly qualified. There was not much useful information about the secret affairs of Lolu Mountain. Instead, Jing Qingjia was asked by the little girl in black about the inside story of Jinsui City and the Wild Mountain. Could it be that this seemingly innocent cave realm mute who did the water monster is lighting himself up? Jing Qingjia was dubious about this at first until one day during a mountain patrol, Zhou Mili seemed to be chatting away. He mentioned that Jing Qing had a wide range of friends, and that he and Qin Zhuoliu and Mr. Mei Qing were both drinking and boxing friends. After hearing this, Jing Qingjia's heart was shocked when he said that. That man named Exen, holding a long sword and carrying 3,000 breaking the array, had previously caused so much trouble in the wild world with a certain scholar who wore a high crown and an iron sword. Outsiders may not know it clearly, but Jing Qingjia has heard about it. As a result, she listened to the innocent little girl that day again, and said that Jing Qing was always talking about it now, and she would have to make up for it when she saw that nephew Jing Shi, who liked to wear white clothes and looked like a rich man in the future. As a meeting gift, she fulfilled her duties and wishes as an elder. The fairy of Yuanhu Lake almost had her heart broken on the spot. After that, Jing Qingjia never went out for a walk again. I am extremely certain that Zhou Zongfeng really meant what he said. Every word was a mystery and his words were on target. He was trying to point her to Jing Qingjia. I quietly passed by Jing Qingjia's house twice, both times with the door closed. The little girl in black, carrying a cotton bag across her body, scratched her face. Yes, it was probably Sister Qingjia who felt that mountain patrols were not interesting and it was hard to say anything clearly, so she declined in this way. I understand, Sister Qingjia is ordering her. My little brain is so bright. A Dali military ferry docked at Nujiadu. On the ferry, there appeared several ministers from the Ministry of Justice hanging with "Nothing Happened" signs, and a group of Dali monks wearing armor and sabers accompanying the army. It is obvious that although this ferry is not big, the standard of this trip is quite high. Some thoughtful people at the ferry could tell at a glance that there must be important people from Dali on board. The person in charge was a handsome man with a vermilion wine gourd hanging from his waist, Chao Gingxin, the minister of the Ministry of Officials in the capital of Li Dynasty. He revisited his old place and was filled with regret. There are also two members of the earthly branch of Dali, children of the Yuan family of Shangzhou Kingdom, Yuan Yingjing sword cultivator Yuan Weijing. Zhou Haijing, the mountain-top female master who complements the earthly branches. The purpose of their trip south to Chuzhou was to 16 people to practice in Luopa Mountain. These Taoist monks and martial arts wizards ranged in age from 9 to 18 years old. On the Lulu mountainside, the only people responsible for picking up people here are a stern-faced boy in green, and a man squatting on the cliffside railing to pick his nose and bounce it off. Since there is no sword talisman according to the rules, this group of outsiders need to walk to Tiaoyu Mountain, which is a long journey. Chao Gingxin, who had been a kiln supervisor for many years, obviously did not have a close relationship with the man with sinister eyebrows. The two parties strode towards each other, high-fived each other, and then held each other tightly. The capital has good soil and water, and Supervisor Chow is getting more and more. He looks more masculine now. Brother Defeng is still charming and has a sharp eye. Zhou Haijing only felt that the man with a dirty temperament and bad appearance had a very dirty look, but she was already used to it and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Jing Dafeng whispered, "This girl is so pretty, isn't she my sister-in-law?" Chao Gingxin sighed. It was all his fault that he had a bad mouth and ended up as a mute eating cactus. Before his uncle Chao Ping led the troops to the barbaric world, he directly issued a military order, telling him to marry Zhou Haijing back home. Jing Dafeng understood by heart that it must be the kind of ambiguous relationship that you have not yet had a bite of. Friends and wives should not be bullied. Jing Dafeng averted his eyes and patted Chao Gingxin on the shoulder. Wolfberry tea, snake gall wine, brothers have it all. Is take care of it. Can replenish the kidneys and strengthen the young. It has great effects. You have to insist on it. Don't be thin-skinned and be polite with your brother. The way to fight on the bed is to tolerate no politeness from you. You must not have the intention to kill the thief and cannot kill the thief. Don't take it off. When I tried to pull up my pants again, the woman asked with confusion on her face, "Are you feeling better?" Chao Gingxin felt his scalp numb when he heard that. He quickly grabbed Jing Dafeng's arm and interrupted the other party's quarrel. "Let's talk about this. Let's get down to business first. I'm a guest at Luopa Mountain this time. I have a lot of responsibility." Jing Dafeng chuckled and said, "Not a small thing? The two armies are facing each other. They just send out troops and end them in a hurry. They beat the drums and withdraw the troops. There are still medicines and wines that can help. But if a woman asks, 'Have you come in?' that's okay. It's really God's will and it can't be restored by manpower." Chao Gingxin couldn't resist, but luckily Jing Dafeng hadn't forgotten the method of gathering sound into a line. Otherwise Zhou Haijing would have listened and he would have fallen into the pit. Chao Gingxin quickly took out a booklet and secretly handed it to Jing Dafeng. "I was not idle this time when I went out. I even suspected that my elbows were turned outward. I focused on Brother Dafeng and Luo Luoshan. There were some 16 words written on the booklet. People's trivial matters can serve as a supplement to the official archives of the imperial court." Jing Dafeng put it into his sleeve calmly and said with a smile, "I'm interested. My brother wants to say thank you. We will see our true love at the wine table later." The boy in green coughed a few times, shook his sleeves, clasped his fist high and introduced himself. "My name is Qin Lingjun, my Taoist name is Jingqing. I am worshipped by the Jisa Peak Ancestral Master Hall. I want talk about my realm. I have met Mr. Chao and I have met all of you. Distinguished guests from the capital." Chao Gingxin nodded and said with a smile, "Ancestor Jingqing is famous far and wide." Qin Lingjun immediately showed his true form with a proud face, hands on his hips. "Hey hey hey. Governor Chao has a sharp eye and can drink at the table. There is no need to sit at the same table with the Zhou guardian of Qilong Lane." As for the group of young men and women, Qin Lingjun really didn't take it seriously. "These raw melon eggs and girl movies really don't look down on you. Now I, Uncle Qin, have learned a lot and have boundless magic power. I can throw out a punch casually. I'm just trying to scare you, but you won't be so frightened that your face turns pale? Can't pear blossoms bring rain and cry? Can you withstand my second punch?" Zhou Haijing asked with a smile. "I would like to ask this immortal master Jingqing, that Pei Qian, Mr. Chen's first disciple, is she on the mountain now?" She and Pei Qian are both among the 4 great masters of Aquarius continent martial arts. Zhou Haijing had already sparred with Yu Hong before when they set up a ring in Dali capital city and lost, but she believed that she could beat that old guy to death in a few years. Qin Lingjun laughed and said, "Pei Qian, you are a big girl. She's very busy. He comes and goes. She has to do some work on the construction of Dadu in Tongyi's Hao. Whoever can do it will do more." That is to say, the master of the mountain stopped him. Otherwise Chao Qinglang, a child in a certain leaderless ancestral hall in Yunyan country, or Master Zhong would have to give up his seat to him. Zhou Haijing was a little unsure about the status of this kid in Tsingyi in Luo Luo Mountain. Just by his tone he didn't take Jijia Pei Qian seriously, as if he were a junior. In the Yujiang water mansion in the Huangting kingdom of the Great Li Fan he called himself a brother to the water god. He shouted 5 and 6 and was the first to follow Chen Pingon up the mountain. He was a veritable elder figure in Lulu Mountain. Later he successfully walked through the water in Jidu, Luzhou, Beiju and the nascent Soul Realm Water Dragon. He knew all this. Not far away from them there was complete silence. These 16 people have different backgrounds, family, education and teachers and have their own thoughts. Each of them carries the hopes of their family, their sect or their own expectations for themselves. But they were all curious, longing, nervous, uneasy and fascinated. Just because I will soon see that Luo mountain with my own eyes, and see the legendary Qin Pingon up close. The founder of Luopa Mountain in Chuzhou, Dali, and the head of the Qingping sword sect in Tonggishao. The last hidden official of the Sword Qi Great Wall, a close disciple of the literary saint lineage, the junior disciple of Xiuhu Cui Chan, the master of the Great Li State, the Taoist companion of Ning Yao, the culprit who killed the chief disciple of the great ancestor of the wilderness, and the sword on the city wall of Tuyue Mountain. The person who carved the words, the Zhejiang warrior who fought with Chao Xi in the battle between Qing and Bai, and the person who joined hands with Lu Xianyang to ask the sword Jingyang Mountain. Not to mention the protagonist, Qin Pingon, in a certain landscape travel book etc. There are so many status titles and so many deeds and feats that one hand can't count them all. Zhou Haijing smiled charmingly, helped many children and asked a key question. Is Master Qin a noble person who forgets things too much? Why doesn't he take time out of his busy schedule to see us? Zheng Dafeng said casually, not to mention meeting our Master Qin, these 16 people may not even be able to climb Lulu Mountain once in the next many years. Zhou Haijing was always arrogant with his words, so he pretended to be surprised and said, wow, I've seen it. Is this the so-called shop bully? Zheng Dafeng glanced at Chao Gingxin. My sister-in-law always speaks in such a subtle way you don't care. Is he also a strict wife? Chao Gingxin smiled and pretended to be stupid. Zheng Dafeng's gaze was like throwing a basin at Chao Gingxin. Definitely not accepted. Yuan Huajing reminded her from the bottom of her heart. Zhou Haijing, please pay attention to your identity. Once the 12 earthly branch monks from Dali arrived, they were nominally under the jurisdiction of Chao Gingxin. Everyone knew the truth. To put it simply, Chao Gung's heart is at most managing things, but Qin Pingon can manage people or both people and things. It just depends on whether Qin Pingon is willing to manage things. Furthermore, don't you know that Qin Pingon is now the Great Li Imperial Master? If Qin Pingon and His Majesty the Emperor hadn't done this deliberately, this news would have been known throughout the continent. Zheng Dafeng then led the group of distinguished guests from the capital on foot to Lulu Mountain. Qin Lingjun, who really regarded himself as the ancestor of Jingqing, had his tail raised to the sky, but he used a trick to spread clouds and rain, driving up a white cloud and slowly floating in the sky. The 16 people had different moods when they saw this scene in the Immortal family. They didn't know much about this old immortal of Yuan Ying realm, who had the same surname as Qin, the young hermit official. They only knew that Patriarch Jingqing had a rejuvenated appearance. He liked peace and quiet and didn't want to go out. He was mostly the kind of person who just wanted to live in peace with the world. He is a righteous Taoist who is willing to live in seclusion in the mountains to practice Taoism, and only wants to achieve immortality. Therefore, the only time he appeared in the outside world was during the Guanli Xingyang mountain. However, I heard that this Patriarch Jingqing and Fai the relationship between Yunshan Knight Tour God and Lord is irreversible. Others go up the mountain to practice Taoism, but the boy in Xingyi really goes up the mountain just to go up the mountain. Walking on the Niujiao Crossing Mountain Road, Zhou Haijing suddenly asked a question about Zheng Dafeng. He is obviously a worldly master with a unique heart. Why do he pretend to be a villain and annoy others? What's the point? She has also seen more than a dozen names like the gods on the mountain who are flying high in the clouds and mist, some Qi practitioners who like to pretend to be profound, the martial arts masters who are approachable, and the people in the world who pretend to be informal but are actually just being lazy. It is still rare for someone to be so afraid of others treating him as a superior person. Chao Gung thought for a while and replied seriously, people who know themselves too clearly are more rootless and drift with the water. Before entering the sea they want to say a few more words to the shore, for fear of being remembered too much. But am afraid of being forgotten too quickly. Zhou Haijing asked casually, why doesn't the Dali court increase the proportion of Qi practitioners among officials? Except for the Song clan of Dali, all countries in the continent wanted to have more Qi practitioners in their temples, whether they were serving as civil servants, military generals or worshipping guests. Chao Gingxin said casually, the rotten air is like a steamer and it is easy to discourage the vigorous energy. Zhou Haijing took a deep look at this drunkard Chao who was admitted to squatting in a manhole and not shitting, but was able to achieve a smooth career in officialdom. He was quite insightful. Zheng Dafeng deliberately didn't look at the flirtatious flirting with his concubine over there. It was disgusting. I am also a little sad, wondering when the hard days will come to an end. Drought will kill me and flood will kill me. A rickety old man wearing a blue shirt and long coat and cloth shoes had been waiting at the gate of Tuyu Mountain in the feudal clan early. There was also a white-haired boy standing with a festive look on his face. A pen in one hand and a booklet in the other, eager to try. Spin done. This time 16 came in one breath. All of them were chi practitioners below the earth immortal level and martial arts warriors below the third realm of God refining. Happy events happen every year, but there are so many today. Next to the old cook there was Tsun Yuanji, who really didn't want to be standing here. Tsun Yuanji looked embarrassed and said, Mr. Zhu, can I really teach others boxing? Zhu Lian said with a smile. You are one of the two candidates appointed by the Mountain Master to teach boxing, the chief and the deputy. You don't have to doubt the Mountain Master's vision of people. From the first moment Tsun Yuanji saw him, she had never doubted Shanzhu Chen's vision, and she had no doubt about it. Tsun Yuanji only gradually changed his attitude very later. Mr. Zhu, is this a pun? Not only did he say that Shanzhu Chen had not misjudged him, but he was also implying that he had not misjudged Shanzhu Chen? Zhu Lian couldn't help but laugh and didn't say anything more. The principle is to be afraid of the unexpected, and the world is afraid of misunderstanding. But Tsun Yuanji misunderstood Master Chen, and Zhu Lian didn't think there was anything wrong with it. On the contrary, it was a unique beauty of his own Luo Luo Mountain. The dignified mountain owner of Luolu Mountain was walking on the mountain road in his own territory. He passed by the female martial artist who was walking non-stop. One thought that the other woman was deliberately not looking at him. There must be 300 taels of silver in this place. The other thought, if I just take a few glances at my fellow warriors in an upright manner, I will be suspected of being a disciple. But if I don't take a glance, I have a guilty conscience. Whether I look at it or not, it is wrong. Is it unfair or not? Tsun Yuanji asked curiously. Even if the Mountain Master has heavy affairs and cannot escape, wouldn't it be better to teach boxing to Pei Qian? Is it because Tongyi's Hao is constructing a large tunnel and there is no need for her? Zhu Lian shook his head and said, Pei Qian is only suitable for learning boxing, not for teaching boxing to others. Why? Pei Qian Zi. Tsun Yuanji was confused. Zhu Lian patiently explained, Pei Qian's boxing is her own boxing. Because Pei Qian's boxing, fisting, and boxing techniques are all unique to her. Even if she is willing to give her money to teach him, she wants to lend her boxing. No matter who looks at it or observes it repeatedly, the other party will not be able to catch it or learn it. Everything about Pei Qian's boxing is drawn inward. The reason why our Mountain Master is Pei Qian's master is that he can both draw his spirit inward. Or you can distract yourself from the outside, then as long as the mountain owner is willing, you can let the bystanders and boxing students understand it clearly at first sight. Tsun Yuanji was a little sad. I have worked hard to learn martial arts and practice boxing, but it seems that I can't compete with the talent. Zhu Lian smiled and said, Don't compare your talent with Pei Qian, it's very boring. At this point there are only a few in the world except Lin Zhongxian, Pei Bei and Chao Xiai, even our mountain masters are included. No one dared to casually ask questions about the same situation as Pei Qian. Do you think that when Pei Qian was a child he went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and used lame excuses like sleepwalking to fool the Mountain Master? To tell you the truth, the Mountain Master was in the bamboo house back then. On the second floor, I once wanted to teach Quan Pei Qian in the same situation, but the result was similar to yours. He fell to the ground after just one move. Tsun Yuanji couldn't hold back her laughter. This was the first time she heard of such a thing. She asked cautiously, Why doesn't Master Chen let Mr. Zhu teach boxing? Zhu Lian smiled and said, Unfortunately, I have already made an appointment with the mountain owner to fight. The two parties agreed that we will fight in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom during the heavy snowfall this year. Before that, I have to think carefully about how to fight. It looks a lot better to lose. Wearing a snow-white robe with a slender figure, he always smiles when he sees him. It is because Zhang Lu has a long life that she is half a head taller than Tsun Yuanji. Some people think that the director of Luo Luo Shan is very gentle and touching, while others find him terrifying and very captivating. I don't know who selected the 4 giants of Luoluoshan. Zhou Xian, the great steward, was in charge of longevity, and Wei Wenlong of Quanfu was the chief minister of Zhoufei. From the time he went up the mountain to this day, Chongqing seemed to have never been blushing with anyone. Chongqing smiled and said, "The mountain master did not show up this time. Do these children have some thoughts in their hearts?" Zhou Lian smiled and said, "That's not the case. Nowadays in the Great Li dynasty, there are countless people who want to go to Luopa Mountain. The criminal department of the imperial court is very careful about the selection of people, and they will not be stupid. Get a few narrow-minded children and send them to us. Although half of them are from related households and come from the Great Li family and the Immortal mansion on the mountain, their status is nothing. Therefore, the Ministry of Punishment selects people in addition to the aptitudes for cultivating Taoism and practicing martial arts. One must be outstanding in first class, and one's character must not be bad, otherwise one day a piece of mouse droppings will ruin the pot of porridge, turn good things into bad things, and bring trouble to the Great Li court." I responded to Luopa Mountain, haha. Not to mention that the minister of the Ministry of Punishment will instruct the officials of the headquarters who were responsible for selecting people to be severely punished by then. He will definitely have to hold the family and the Immortal mansion behind someone accountable. I am afraid that even His Majesty the Emperor will have to personally intervene in this matter. So each of these 16 people know in their own minds that if they dare to be ignorant when they arrive at Luolu Mountain, they will probably not even have the chance to be sensible in the future. Luopa Mountain is willing to place expectations on them and cultivate them carefully, which is not the reason why these children think they can meet Master Qin if they want to. Wei Bo, who wore a golden ring in his earrings, appeared out of thin air at the foot of the mountain. Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Yeo Shinjun has come to join in the fun, so he is not afraid that the ostentation will be too big and scare the fledgling children." Wei Bo was too lazy to answer. This new name was shouted out most happily by the little boy in Tsing-yi among the poor people in the mountain. Whoever dares to disrespectfully call Wei Shanjun, Brother Wei, he will become impatient and will not give up until he corrects the other person. When Qin Pingon returns to Luopa Mountain and has someone to support him, and Qin Lingjun is on Wei Bo's side, it will be a big deal. Wei Bo wanted to deal with Qin Lingjun for more than a day or two. Wei Bo remembered something. The old deaf boy of the great sword Chiwal, whose Taoist name is Long Sheng and whose alias is Gontang, fell down on the battlefield of the great sword Chiwal, visited the wild dojo and then rose to the top again. Now the old deaf boy is still ascended to the realm. He will soon come to Lolu Mountain to serve as a registered worshipper. The white-haired boy muttered, "It's really unlucky that someone from the Ascension realm comes to worship him again. Can't you imitate Jing Hao, the Taibao of Luxia Ziqinggong, who goes up the mountain to drink and then get out?" Chongqing asked, "What do you think of Guizhujiu?" Wei Bo asked strangely, "Why does Chongsho Zhanglu ask this?" Zhu Lian, however, was very knowledgeable and said, "My Taoist friend Chongsho has only been a priest for a few years, and he already wants to give up his career. Isn't it appropriate?" Only then did Wei Bo understand. Chongqing smiled and said, "Of course I am not resigning from the position of chief executive immediately, but I feel that if this matter is really feasible, I can make preparations early." Chongqing actually has an idea in his mind about the next candidate for Luolu Mountain's leader, who is Guizhujiu, the direct disciple of the mountain leader, who comes from the Great Wall of Sword Qi and has been to the Summer Palace. Previously, they accompanied the mountain owner on a trip to the Damu Temple in the Lotus Root Blessed Land. Chongqing looked at Guizhujiu with admiration and was very optimistic about it. No matter how much he saw it, he was satisfied. Guizhujiu is the bitter hand of fellow senior sister Pei Qian. The white-haired boy pulls the girl in the mink hat and worships Guizhujiu as the leader of the alliance. These things may seem like a joke, but in fact if you look deeper it is not that simple. A Liuxiao boat approached the border of Chuzhou. Qin Pingon called Pu Lu and Guan Gui to Shenku. They sat down in the house and said straight to the point, "You will soon follow Guken to Fuyao Island to establish a sect and become a brand new sect. The first generation of ancestors for a long time, it is not easy to be respected by people inside and outside the mountain. Don't get used to it over time. Parting is imminent and ugly words are ahead. If I can send you in, I can drag you out. When the time comes, Guken won't be able to stop her even if she wants to, and besides he may not be able to stop her." The two of them were silent. The nascent soul realm old woman, whose real name was Su Fu, trembled and plucked up the courage to break the silence. We will follow Mr. Chen's teachings. They are all top-notch people. When it comes to the relationship and friendship between Gu Qian and Qin Pingon, they have seen and heard it with their own eyes. If Qin Pingon really wanted to deal with them, he didn't even need to say a word. When they met, he just looked at Gu Zhongzhu. Gu Qian would definitely kill them without saying a word. The leader of a sect cleans up the family in his own territory and does not need to report to the Chinese Confucian temple. Xin Ku suffered the most at the hands of Qin Jianxian. In those bleak years when ghosts were beating against the wall, how could the suffering be dismissed with just a word? Since the old woman Pu Lu had taken the advantage, the old master immediately stood up, clasped his fists and said in a deep voice, Qin Jianxian, Xin Ku has now awakened and changed his past. If it weren't for Qin Jianxian's love, he would be lucky enough to follow sect Master Gu and make a fortune. With his genealogical identity, he dared to say something conscientious at this moment. From the first step of leaving that world, Xin Ku made up his mind. In this life, no matter how many years or decades he had left to live, he would just run for the future. A good person does good deeds. Qin Jianxian's Taoism is endless. You should know that these words written by Qin Shen are extremely sincere words from his heart, and not a single word is a false pretense. Xin Ku even stood up to express his stance, and even the old woman Su Fu and the ghost Guan Piao had to stand up to show their sincerity. Qin Pingon put his hands in his sleeves, nodded and smiled. There is no doubt that what I said is true. We have to wait and see whether it is true or false. We have agreed in advance that if you have the ability to make me believe it today, I will be there tomorrow. If you lied to me about anything, it would be a double crime. The more Xin Ku talked, the more energetic he became. He just kept one thought clear to the end, risked it all, and said loudly, just never give Qin Jianxian a chance to misjudge Xin Ku. Qin Pingon stretched out his hand and pressed twice, indicating that they all sit down and chat. There is no need to be so formal. I will let Gu Qian help you light a life-extending lamp in the ancestral hall, and I won't give you a heavy hand. If you are greedy for life and fear of death, you will not dare to take it. Opportunities for good people to do good things. As soon as Xin Ku touched the chair with his buttocks, he quickly stood up and thanked Qin Jianxian again. The old master was overjoyed. Is such a good thing really possible? Su Fu and Guan Gui looked at each other and lit a life-extending lamp in the ancestral hall, which was really equivalent to saving another life. Qin Pingon did not want to simply use force to suppress others, causing them to have nightmares whenever they think of the name Qin Pingon. He slowly said, if you ask what a gentleman is, it is just a sincere and upright thought. Over time, if you hold it to the end, you will naturally. Facing small things is like facing a big enemy. Sitting in a secret room is like sitting on a thoroughfare. Day and night I have to examine myself 3 times and check myself. Year after year I am determined to follow the path. I will naturally face a big enemy as if nothing has happened and I am in a busy city. Who can be in this world? Who can bully me in terms of profit? Who can insult me in name? Who can truly hold me accountable for hundreds of years? The room was like a secret room. The 3 of them chewed these words carefully, but no one dared to be the first to break the silence. Everyone was filled with admiration. Anyway, Xin Ku felt that Shan Juchen was worthy of being a Zijing martial artist with powerful boxing skills. He spoke calmly and delivered heavy punches, making others have the urge to kneel down and kowtow in worship. Ghost Guan Peep, who had also been a teacher, felt that Qin Pingon was worthy of being a disciple of literary saint. The old woman Su Fu felt that Qin Jianxian and Ning Yao were a match made in heaven. Qin Pingon was actually quite embarrassed, so he had to joke, don't be confused and confused, quickly take out a pen and paper and write down these few words of wisdom. The solemn atmosphere suddenly relaxed a little and Qin Pingon said, the separation is imminent, so how about we both think of each other's good things? Xin Ku had already found some mysterious feeling, and before the other 2 people could say anything, he had already said, Xin is so sincerely convinced, how dare you disobey your order? For some reason Xin Ku was scared to death of Luopa Mountain before, but now Xin Ku felt that he was not afraid even going up the mountain. Xin Ku was the first to say anything nice, so Su Fu and Guango had no choice but to follow suit. Qin Pingon stood up and walked to the window, smiling and saying, there is an old saying in our hometown which says that a person cannot be poor. If he has no money in his pocket, it may be temporary. If he is poor, he will be poor for a lifetime. Su Fu and Guan Qiu looked at Xin Ku at the same time. The old grandmaster looked puzzled but asked them with his eyes, "Aren't you all flatterers? Shin gave you the opportunity but you didn't use it." Lu Xianyang clicked his tongue and said in surprise, "You said the custom of Lolu Mountain is strange, isn't it?" Gukin nodded with a smile and said, "If you smoke a cage with orchid, it will smell fragrant over time?" Huang Lai had no choice but to think of a word to echo. "Qin Shan has done a great job. When we reach Niujiao Ferry we are close to Luopa Mountain. Nothing happens today, even if you don't make money it is still valuable." Another uneventful day for the little ferry. The group of 16 people who climbed to Tiaoyu Mountain instead of Lolu Mountain felt a little less disappointed because they saw the long-lived Taoist patriarch at the foot of the mountain. Even though the real owner still didn't show up, Lolu Mountain did not treat them as dispensable, as a completely negligible existence. But they didn't know that Qin Pingon was actually sitting at the top of the steps of Tiaoyu Mountain Road at that time. Not only that but also Lu Jianxian and the madman Gukan. It was just a cover-up trick that prevented them from seeing it. Lu Xianyang wanted to sit in the middle but Gukan refused, so Lu Xianyang moved his seat. As a result, Gukan followed him and moved his seat. Lu Xianyang became angry and asked his eldest brother to take a small limelight. "What the hell?" Lu Xianyang, who still couldn't succeed, said angrily, "Little slugs, they are all the people who are about to become the leader of the clan. Are you naive?" Gukan chuckled and said, "I'm naive but you're not." When Lu Xianyang learned that Qin Pingon would not show up today it didn't matter. He immediately got up and left, patting his and leaving. If he didn't stay here he would have his own place to stay. Sect leader Lu first went to the Longshu River near the blacksmith shop. Being familiar with the road, I put a duck under both arms and went back to my mountain to stew duck with bamboo shoots and dried duck. It's a pity that it can't be called Old Duck Pot, it's a little older. Qin Pingon and Gukan returned to Jilin Peak. The young Yin Guan was polite in his words and Jing Qingjia couldn't be more polite. This made Qin Pingon a little confused. It was actually the first time that Gukan and this Jingqiqing fairy named Yuanhu met, and the arrangement was simple. Lu Yuzhou was the deputy sect master, and Jing Qingjia was regarded as the god of wealth in name only. Pei Qian had no choice but to use the Three Mountains talisman again, leaving the fish scale ferry in Tonggishao and arriving at the lotus root blessed land. Pei Qian first went to the Xianxia temple in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom. The martial arts surged forward, but Pei Qian once again smashed them away with his fists. The martial arts luck fell like rain on the blessed land of the world. On the top of a strange mountain somewhere, Pei Qian then replaced Qin Pingan's highest position. In addition to the first level of martial arts, which is equivalent to just stepping into the martial arts, there are a total of 8 levels from the second level to the mountaintop level, and there are 8 positions on the top of the mountain. Coupled with the third level of the end, the energy is strong, the true state is restored and the spirit is reached. So there are 11 positions in total. For thousands of years, every genius martial artist has competed with his contemporaries to win. If he reaches the strongest level in each moment, and ascends to the next level, he can receive a gift of martial arts from heaven and earth. But for 10,000 years, there have been countless warriors in the world. The number of warriors who have reached the next level with the title of the strongest is not small, but those who can come here to stand for a while, especially those who cannot give up their position, are without exception. He is a genius among martial arts geniuses. But in less than 200 years, most of the old faces on the mountaintop were quickly replaced. Qingming Tianxiaolin Zhangxian, the Yashan Forest Master, is now the well-deserved #1 martial artist in the world. This person, whose real name was the Great Sword Chi Priest of the state of Yen, came to this place once to return to his true form. Pei Bei, the female martial arts goddess of the Daoist dynasty and the best martial artist in the world, has a place on the top of the mountain. As Pei Bei's direct disciple Chao Ci, dressed in white, occupies 4 positions here. Qin Pingon had also been here before, but within a few days he was squeezed out of his position by his founding disciple. So here and now there are 2 Pei Qian of different ages. First there is a weird little black girl. Then there is a young woman with a bun. Pei Qian failed to see the master here. She said nothing and stood on the top of the mountain waiting for a long time. When she found that her mind still had not returned to where she was, she walked down the mountain silently, not even bothering to say anything to that being. The strange existence who once again made an exception for Pei Qian walked beside her and said with a smile, "Not bad, he showed up sooner than I expected." Pei Qian was already in a bad mood, but she just remembered that her master had received half a punch. She endured it again and did not say a word that it was none of your business. The ancestor of the military strategist who used his fists to open up a martial arts path for the world 10,000 years ago said with a smile. You can't hold grudges for that fluttering half-fist until now, right? Pei Qian really endured it again and again but finally couldn't help it. He just didn't forget to say the word senior first and then said, "Why do you have such a bad mouth? I feel that I was disrespectful in my words and deeds when I went up and down the mountain last time. If you have the ability, come at me and put the blame on my master. What kind of hero do you think you are?" The ancestor of the military strategist laughed heartily and said, "That boy Chen Pingon, his boxing skills are acceptable, just average. He is far behind Chao Ci, but his ability to recruit disciples is quite good." Pei Qian learned a lesson and was worried that this guy didn't follow any moral principles, so she just went down the mountain in silence and said nothing. In the past, Xiao Haitan's temper would have taught you what firecrackers are and what smoke rising from ancestral graves is. The first ancestor of the military strategist escorted Pei Qian all the way to the foot of the mountain and said with a smile, "Go back and tell Chen Pingon that you can come to the foot of the mountain to talk." "Just the bottom of the mountain?" Pei Qian said angrily. "Senior is so capable, please invite my master yourself." The tall man with a vague figure stretched out his hand as if he wanted to rub Pei Qian's head. "Who cares about this temper?" Pei Qian turned away and glared at him. The next moment, just as Pei Qian was about to turn his head and look towards the top of the mountain, his mind was thrown out of this vast world. A man wearing a snow-white robe with pure golden eyes stood on the top of the mountain with his hands in sleeves, condescending, and the burly man who turned to look at him narrowed his eyes and smiled. "I came uninvited, I am half an old friend. Let's meet again. If you're not convinced, then have a fight?" The first ancestor of the military strategist stared at that figure and sneered, "You're just half a man, how dare you pretend to be a master and scare me? I never thought that a tall woman would appear next to that man, leaning on the ground with a sword, scaring you."